the nuclear material might not have been there. Might not have been there.
All right, welcome to Young Turks. Cenk Uygur comparing with you guys. I feel better today because Trump has done some positive things today, which is a bit shocking. So we'll see if it holds.
Brace for impact. Right?
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. So I've been getting yelled at online all day.
So what's new?
I know, right? What you're saying that Trump enforcing a ceasefire against Israel is a good thing? No, boo! We don't want Israel to have a ceasefire. No, but wait, we do want Israel to comply with a ceasefire. No, you have to hate Trump anyway. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, we'll adjudicate. We'll sort that out. Okay.
I think one of the best things that you can do to kind of understand this current political moment, because a lot of things don't make sense if you're kind of operating based on the old partisan lens. I wish that things were as cut and clear as they might have been in the early aughts, but they're not. They're not, and it's hard to make sense of how things are changing and realigning. We'll talk about this tomorrow, so I have time to produce it, but Candace Owens was on Piers Morgan today for a one-on-one interview. That interview blew my mind, okay? Because everything she said was accurate. Everything she said was true. And everything she said is reminiscent of what you would hear from a left-wing show arguing against essentially aiding and abetting Israel in its genocide in Gaza, for instance.
Yeah, so I'll say it. They had a whole giant Piers Morgan episode about this massive split in MAGA. But I went on Kyle and Crystal just a couple of days ago, and they think there's no split at all.
No, there's definitely a split, right?
But that's what they said. So I don't know if they're on this planet. And when I asked them if they're on this planet, they seem to get mad, and they're, by the way, to be fair to them, they're representing their audience, and their audience doesn't see it at all. That's because they're not getting accurate information.
Well,
like if you think there's no MAGA split in the country, you're a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
So hold on. I wouldn't say they're not getting accurate information. I trust that Crystal and Kyle are giving accurate information.
No, I just mean in general.
Hold on, but what I think is an issue, and I was guilty of this. This was an issue that I had in the way that I was covering stories some years ago. It's that you end up in a bubble and you don't even realize it.
Oh,
right?
That's definitely right.
And when you're in that bubble, there's certain information that's not getting to you. You have to literally actively seek it out because of these algorithms serving up what the algorithm thinks you want to know or thinks you want to see.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that Candace Owens believes in. Obviously we don't, but that interview was fire. Everything she said in that interview was correct. And if you can't give her credit for saying things that we on the left believe, you really have to ask yourself, how are you operating? Are you operating based on, supporting a specific tribe no matter what?
Yes, that's definitely what they're doing.
And if you do that, well then you're not driven by policy. You're not driven by actually accomplishing the policies that we think will make the country better.
Yeah, look, it's not about Kyle and Crystal at all. I mean, oftentimes I think sometimes these days, it used to be oftentimes, they're usually among the more reasonable. But these days, like if you're on the left and you're watching any of the other shows, you're not getting accurate information at all. They're telling you that the actual Trump voters are liars and they love war. That's not true at all, right? So that's some of the Trump voters will do whatever Trump wants, but a lot of them are actually anti-war. And they're making it seem like almost all the other left-wing shows as if the most extreme MAGA guy represents all 77 million Trump voters. And if you believe that, then you'll hate them. Of course, you'll want to call them fascists and racists and Nazis and all those things. But that's maniacal. No, as you get closer to the middle, There's a lot of former Obama voters, former Bernie voters, anti-war voters, anti-establishment voters, and almost none of the other left-wing shows are acknowledging that. They're out in la-la land. And honestly, yes, most of the other left-wing shows are totally lying to their audience. And they're saying, no, there's no split. They all will do whatever Trump wants. They're all the same voter. They're all hardcore MAGA, and they're all fascist. And by the way, as Kyle pointed at me and said, yes or no? Is MAGA fascist? Well, what an asinine question. What do you mean by MAGA? What do you mean, and do you mean Trump voters? Because no, not all Trump voters are fascist. But if you say that on another left-wing show, they'll lose their minds. They'll say, no, you have to call them fascists. I'm the purist, I'm the most left.
That's fine.
Give me clicks, give me clicks.
I'm not interested in getting into the business of other shows and how they conduct business. You do you, boo, right? But look, I just think that there is an interesting dynamic at play when Breaking Points, for instance, which I love. I listen to and watch Breaking Points almost on a daily basis at this point. Crystal knows better than anyone. Sagar and Jetty is very critical of going to war in Iran. Very critical. He's not a left winger.
How could you possibly say there isn't a split? How could you possibly say that? And what they'll do, I swear to God, and I know it, they'll move the goalposts. So look, you can look at it. We put the interview up on tyt.com/press. And as you watch it, I just want you to like notice what happens, right? I say I don't agree with Trump, and I say, but I think we can get some of the Trump voters. Honestly, they're not listening at all. Then they just go back to, so here's what's wrong with Trump, and I'm like, yeah, I agree. That's what's wrong with Trump. So let's talk about how to get the voters in the middle. And they're like, okay, now here's what's wrong with Trump. So like, then I get frustrated. I'm like, wait, are we having the same conversation here? And so part of that is framing it as we're tougher and meaner on Trump voters. We got them, right? Oh, Jank, look at him being soft on Trump voters. That's not a real leftist. And as Kyle said, look, man, I don't catch.
Well, I mean, you're not a leftist, number one.
Yeah, right. But I'm on the left. Like I'm massively on the left, right? And they're like leftists don't represent the majority of the left. I mean, whatever words we use, right? Radical left, whatever. They're a small sliver, right? But they always make it seem like we're the true left. Well, the polling doesn't indicate that at all. At all, okay? So, Kyle was like, oh yeah, you're coddling them. And he used like some profane language, etc. Like, I'm okay, I'm a grown up, that's fine, I don't care, right? But by the way, if I said that to Kyle and I said, oh, you know what? By helping Trump and MAGA win elections by driving away their voters, driving away the voters that are anti-war, anti-establishment in the middle, you're coddling their balls, Kyle. Okay, it's okay, we're all adults here, right? I mean, that's what he said. But if I said that to him in the middle, I bet you he would have been super mad.
Is that how you coddle balls?
I don't know. I think he did it that way. I don't have enough experience with it. Kyle seemed to demonstrate it pretty accurately, I guess. Anyway, seriously, guys, look, it is what it is. We have differences of opinion these days. I'm not saying cancel them, don't watch them. I mean, Anna just told you she watches Breaking Points. I go on Breaking Points. I have these conversations. I'm trying to have conversations where we discuss what is the best strategy to take power away from Trump and bring those anti-establishment, anti-war, anti-corruption voters to our side. And by our side, I don't mean establishment Democrat. If you're gonna go in that direction, they're never gonna say yes. And by the way, I also don't mean radical left, because if you go in that direction, they're never gonna say yes. But if you go populist left, core Bernie, economic populism, they will say yes. So please, it's not about watch this show or that show. Watch all the shows, get all of the opinions, okay? Make sure you're getting the facts. And at the end of the day, think through, okay, it's easy for me to get tribal and say, I hate those guys. That's an easy thing. And by the way, Kyle said, you used to do that, and some of you guys wrote in yesterday and stuff. Yeah, first of all, I do it to their politicians all the time.
The politicians
you fight
are
up,
different.
You look up,
yes,
you fight the politicians, okay?
That's the difference.
Right.
I wanna emphasize that. I wanna say it again, because people keep conflating the politicians with the voters. I'm not interested in attacking voters. I am interested in attacking the politicians.
Bingo. And by the way, and look, Crystal and Kyle are pretty good on this, not some of the other shows, but but also holding the Democrats accountable.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Because if you don't hold the Democrats accountable, you got no credibility. So, oh yeah, the Republicans are terrible and they're all the devil, but the Democrats and Kamala Harris run perfect campaigns and Joe Biden's a saint. You got to be kidding me, no way. But luckily, most people have moved on past that, right? And they were never in that camp in the first place. So look around, watch everything, and then see what do you think is the better strategy. And Kyle said that the better strategy, and repeated online throughout, is we're gonna win the left and liberals and then win the left. But that's what we've been trying to do, and we just lost twice to Trump doing that same exact strategy.
Yeah.
You have to win the anti-establishment voters. You do that through populist left. I don't even think Kyle and Crystal would disagree with that. I don't know if some of the radicals or the establishment guys will certainly disagree.
Right.
Maybe some of the radicals will disagree because you can't ever agree with anyone on the other side about anything, right? But overall, please use your mind. Please, by that I don't mean it like in a derogatory way. Use your own independent judgment. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Kyle's word for it. Don't take Rando's word for it, okay? Think through what is the best strategy. Is the best strategy to call the other voters fascists and drive them away? Or is the better strategy say, hey, if you actually do agree with us, we're not going towards you, they're coming towards us. Anti-establishment, anti-war, anti-corruption, then great, you're welcome. Welcome to come here. And I say that about the Young Turks. Yeah, if you're an independent voter and you believe in populism and you actually meant all those things, you are definitely welcome here. And go ask the other left-wing shows, are they welcome? Now that I've stated it this way, they'll seem like jackasses if they say they're not.
I mean,
so
yeah.
they might pretend that they are, but every single day they're like, fascists, go away, fascists, don't vote left, don't support the left. Well, if you do that, yeah, they're not gonna support the left, they're gonna go away just like you told them to.
One of the things that Candace Owens said today, and look, it takes balls to say this. I don't think I have the balls to say it, but she literally said, no, I don't want regime change I think we should have a talk about regime change in Israel.
Yeah.
And then she talked about how she believes that Israel has carried out more terroristic acts than Iran has. Which, look, yeah, that was strong. But my point is, she is willing to look at the broader picture, right? Not just what's happening at this moment, but what has happened historically with the formation of Israel, the wars that have been fought on behalf of Israel, and she's calling it like she's seeing it. And so if there is a contingent of Trump voters, and she did vote for Trump, and now she's like speaking out against him because of what happened in Iran with the bombing of the nuclear sites and all of that. If there's a contingent on the right that consists of this anti-war, ideology on the topic of preventing wars, I will work with them.
Yeah,
I will work with them, period. I don't care. I don't care if they're right wingers. If they are legitimate in being anti-war, not wanting to engage in regime change on that specific issue, yes, I will work with them. You wanna know why? Because preventing war, to me, is more important than being pure to the left. I don't care about the left, I don't care about the right, I care about results. And I'm sorry, this false dichotomy, this BS like tribalism has only hurt the country. On areas where we can work together, we should work together. And I do think that there's a contingent on the right, voters, and yes, a few media folks who are sick of the regime change wars, they're sick of the forever wars, and they're not full of crap, okay? Because they literally say things publicly that could ruin them, but they say it anyway.
Yeah, so look, last couple of things here. So on that interview, there was times where Candace went too far.
Yes, supporting Kanye West and all that.
Oh yeah, I didn't even get to that part.
Yeah.
No, that's a disaster. And even when she says, I want regime change in Israel, and Pierce says, yeah, I mean, they should get rid of Netanyahu, all so good so far. And then she later talked about using the military in the context of Israel. And I'm like, okay, bring it down, okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so now having said that, she's saying some of the things that we on the left, me, Amy Goodman, Bernie Sanders have been saying for 20 years, but we couldn't get anybody to pay attention. And this sucks about American media. It's like super toxic about American media, but it's true. If you say it on the left, they're never gonna pay attention. The minute anyone on the right says it, they're like, oh, that's such an interesting point. Oh, you know what? And we'll talk about it later in the show. Tom Massey, Candace Owens, when they say, hey, what has Israel done for us? Like if you ask that, we've been asking that question for 20 years on the left and nobody paid attention. The minute those two asked the question, the American media is like, oh, wait a minute, that is a provocative question. What has Israel done for us, right? And the answer is zero, nothing. They've taken, started wars, etc. So, okay, guys, this is last thing here. Simple concept, but it hasn't been treated as a simple concept. You can agree with some things and disagree with other things about a person. And I'm saying it like I'm almost being patronizing, right? I get it. But that's because so many people say back, no, you can't. You know, you either have to be 100% for Trump or 100% against Trump. Same thing for Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, etc. If you even give them credit on a thing where they're agreeing with you, no, that's toxic, terrible, normalizes, blah, blah, blah. They make up a bunch of words.
There's no
legitimizing,
there's
platforming.
No normalizing. Okay, there's
right?
Candace Owens, it has been normalized. Okay, she has a
Whether
massive audience,
yeah.
massive platform. There's nothing Cenk and I can do that further normalizes Candace Owens. She's wildly popular.
No, it goes to a super arrogant sense of entitlement that I think actually comes more from the establishment Democrats. And it was perfectly illustrated in the Kamala Harris-Joe Rogan situation. They're like, Kamala shouldn't go on. It would normalize, it would platform Joe Rogan.
Please.
He has 39 million subscribers. He would literally be platforming Kamala Harris, not the other way around. And they're like, no, don't do it. No, but then you're stuck in your own little cave and nobody's platforming you and you're like, I haven't platformed anyone. Yeah, that's why no one have heard from you. Okay, so like he's giving you an opportunity to make your case. And that's another thing I was surprised by. I thought that they would see the bro shows are an open rebellion, right? Rogan again today, beating up Trump on immigration, not even the wars, right? Tim Dillon, Theo Vaughn, massively beating up Israel and saying, what are they doing for us and get out of the wars, etc. I'm like, and they're like, nope, I don't see it. And they said that Rogan was like, I don't know, I don't want to paraphrase. You could watch the interview for yourself, tyt.com/press. But like, he put Rogan in the same batch as MAGA, I believe. I'm like, no. Rogan has a whole bunch of right-wing positions I don't agree with, but he's not MAGA. That's a different category. He's in the brosphere. They're more independent. They're not in that same category. They agree. There's a lot of overlap, right? But on war, and even on immigration, he's like, why are they kidnapping people off the streets in the middle of the country?
He's actually been good on the topic of immigration. I remember Rogan got a lot of backlash in Trump's first term, because he hated Trump's immigration policies and spoke out against it. So look, I think Americans are a lot more complicated and complex than all left or all right. I think most people are a mix of some conservative views, some liberal views, some far left views, some far right views. It's a mix. Ordinary people are a hodgepodge of political views. And so I think the issue that I have in general is this effort or this obsession to impugn people's character based on their views on one issue or their opinion on one issue or the other.
Or which side they're on.
Or which side they're on,
It's just pure tribalism. It's like tribalism crack. So you know you're on tribalism crack when the other side comes to you and you reject them. Like, we're not going to them. They're like, oh, you're doing the strategy Kamala Harris and Joe Biden did where they try to get Republicans in the suburbs. No, they did that strategy by wrapping their arms around Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, and conservative corporatist positions. That's a terrible strategy. No, but when the other side comes to you and goes, you're right, we're anti-war, you're right, we like the idea of anti-corruption. Yeah, you could say, hey, you picked the wrong guy for that, Donald Trump. But the right guy is Bernie Sanders and others. You could have that conversation like grown-ups and like human beings, or you could do what a lot of the other left is doing. Fascist, wrong tribe, I hate you, right? Well, then that brother isn't gonna have a conversation with you, and he's not gonna come to your side. So again, I find it so obvious, but yet there is a real massive school of thought that says, no, don't try to get those voters to come to your side, call them evil and shun them. And shun Rogan when he agrees with you, shun Candace Owens, shun Tucker, to shun all of them, even when they take positions that were like textbook left-wing anti-war positions, right?
Yeah, look, guys.
And that's just, to me, that's mental. But if you think that makes sense, okay, good. There's tons of left-wing shows that are doing that. You'll be thrilled. You'll go on there and they'll just, they're like, they agreed with us. They're liars. They're fascists. Ha ha. We drive them away. We drive all their voters away. Oh my God, there's like dozens of shows like that. So you'll enjoy that.
So look, the final thing I'll say is I became politicized in the lead up to the preemptive war in Iraq. And at that time, and for a long time after that, every single Republican, we're talking about voters, members of the media and the politicians, were neocons. Every single one of them. There wasn't an anti-war conservative to be found. And it brings tears to my eyes that today that has changed. That is a good thing. Because we have to end this paradigm. It is crushing our country.
Yeah.
And so look, if you think I'm a bad person, if you think Cenk's a bad person for being willing to work with anyone on the right who agrees with our anti-war stance, then you can go ahead and think we're bad people. I really don't give a damn.
Yeah,
because I want to see results. I want to see change, and you're not going to get it by living and dying in an echo chamber.
Because of that, I'm forced to say one super last thing, guys.
Of course.
Of course. So guys, I covered the Iraq War. Young Turks was on the air in 2002 in the lead up to the Iraq War. And so that was Ben Mankiewicz and I back then. And we were one of only 2 national shows against the Iraq War. The other one was by the legend, Amy Goodman. So Democracy Now! And the Young Turks going, no, don't go in. And they were doing the same exact playbook as they are in Iran now, right? Now here we are, we both survived, we're lone survivors of original digital media, right? And now we're both against the Iran war. And tip of the hat to Amy Goodman, total legend. We appreciate you, sister, okay?
Still going strong, by the way.
Yeah, and so now, that is why what Anna said, if you didn't live through it, you don't know it. I was tearing my hair out in the lead up to the Iraq war. They didn't attack us. It's a lie. And the weapons of mass destruction, that's not even true. And we're not going to be greeted as liberators. It's crazy, right? And at the time, there wasn't a single Republican you could find. Every Republican was pro-war.
Correct.
And anytime you say, you so you're best friends with Saddam Hussein, support the troops. That's what everyone on the right would say. And almost everyone in the middle because of so much brainwashing by mainstream media, right? Now we have allies on the right, and it's unbelievable. It's a great thing that they're allies. And even in this preposterous fantasy land thinking that they're all lying in unison, who cares? Because they're telling their viewers to be anti-war. They're telling their viewers, be careful about Israel driving this agenda like they did in the Iraq war. So all of those viewers and voters are getting that message. And now we have allies, and tons of people on our side are trying to drive those allies away. Having fought with no allies at all against the Iraq war, trust me, you're in infinitely better shape with allies. And then they'll say, yeah, but what good does it do? Well, without allies, without MAGA pushing back, would Donald Trump have been as clear about Israel, you're gonna do the ceasefire, you're gonna bring your planes back? Maybe he would have, and maybe he wouldn't have. And would he have been, remember when he first said we're gonna put ground troops into Gaza? MAGA pushed back ferociously and he reversed it in 24 hours. Again, if you watch those shows, you don't know that probably because they don't tell you when it works, right? So I do know having half of MAGA push back against this, or half of Trump's voters overall push back against this, is definitely at least a little helpful so that we get to a moderation and don't bring ground troops into Gaza or Iran and get enmeshed in a terrible war. And at the very least, guys, get caught trying to build an alliance to stop a war, because policy is infinitely more important than which tribe you're in.
100%. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, some updates on the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. A lot of news to get to, so stick around, we'll be right back.
We didn't blow up diplomacy.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
right, back on TYT here. We're almost out of seats for the Brave New Films screening tomorrow night here in LA. Robert Greenwald and I will do a little bit of Q&A after the movie screening. I'll be at the movie screening, obviously, from the beginning to end. So tyt.com/events, it's free. So if you're in the neighborhood, come by. There's a couple of seats left. tyt.com/events, and that's Gaza journalists under fire tomorrow night here in LA. Okay, wait, no, today's Tuesday. Sorry, Thursday night in LA. Okay. Yeah, okay, and so I'm gonna read you guys different points of view, and I'm reading it blind, except I read the first one. Embedded Dude says, I live in an 80% MAGA town, and I've yet to meet one who isn't 100% behind Trump, but I guess I'm in a bubble. So, brother, yes and no. In your neck of the woods, it might be that way, or it might seem that way, right? But in other areas, it's not like that at all. There's Trump voters all across the country. And if in a town that is mainly Trump voters, they're more likely to be in unison, right? So that doesn't invalidate your experience. Your experience is also true. But two things, or many, many things, can be true at the same time. So other people are not having that same experience that you are, right? And some are. Again, Robert V writes, and Bernie Sanders' foreign policy resonates with 90% of MAGA. Yeah, I don't know what the number is, but it's big. It's big. That's why you had a lot of Bernie voters switch over and vote for Trump. And the mainstream media hates that and says, oh yeah, that's because they love Trump. No, they just were anti-war, anti-establishment. Compass 1981, again, it doesn't mean that Trump is, it's just that he was at least offering up the marketing that he was. Compass 1981 says, I was camping all weekend, disconnected from the world for a few days. I came down from the mountain yesterday to this crap storm. I seriously considered turning around and heading back to the mountains. Although we do have good news on it today, so we'll get to that in a minute. Jake's Left Tricep of Fury says, I just don't understand Kyle and Crystal attacking us. They can approach change the way they want. We do it our way. Both can do good and move the goalposts. The attacks help no one. Yeah, look, guys, you can watch the interview, and I'm not sure that I would even frame it as Kyle and Crystal attacking us, but we have a significant disagreement. And that's okay as long as we don't accuse each other of like grifting or having ulterior motives. Okay, we disagree, and we disagree strongly, so it's okay. Okay, Irish Fiddle Dragon says, it's my understanding Candace Owens was a progressive commentator historically before making an abrupt and lucrative shift. Maybe she's getting an itch on her conscience.
Who, Candace Owens?
Candace Owens.
I don't think so. I think for Candace Owens, she started to be a little critical of Israel, and then she got the kind of backlash that, quite honestly, we're used to. And that made her want to dig in more. And then she started learning more. And then she realized, oh, wait a minute, I've been hating Muslims all this time because I've been told that they're the dangerous, evil terrorists who are coming for all of us. It seems like a bit of a narrative was built to support what Israel wants to do in the Middle East. And so I actually think it came organically. And this is what happens, by the way, when someone faces the kind of backlash she faced. Makes people more curious about what's really going on.
All right, so there's like a million comments, and I'll keep reading them throughout the show. I'll just read one here and then we'll get to the news. David Rodriguez wrote, I've lived in a hard right area all my life. I've never once shifted right. I've talked to so many right-leaning people along the years about politics, and they're not psychos, they're human beings.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I mean, it's such a simple thing, but these days if you say like MAGA are human, that literally triggers some people, right?
Yeah, if you say you believe in people power, then prove it. That's it.
Oh, that's interesting too.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to agree with them on most of the things. I have to keep saying that because people want to live in a black and white world.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
All right, let's get to the news. This was a surprising thing to wake up to, but nonetheless, take a look.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
I do understand that. That was President Donald Trump, and As of this morning, it seemed as though the ceasefire deal between Iran and Israel was basically off. And that was what Trump was responding to. He was frustrated by it. But what was even more surprising was the tough talk that he had for Israel. Take a look.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that.
So he's referring to Iran allegedly shooting a rocket or a missile that may have been shot accidentally. It didn't hurt anyone, it didn't damage anything. And then in response to that, Israel basically does what Israel usually does, okay, overreact, over-respond, and use disproportionate force. Now, that's the reason why he had harsher words for Israel. And to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever heard an American president be so critical of Israel, openly, overtly. You'll read about what they have to say about Israel behind the scenes, maybe. But in this case, wow. Now, let me just quickly say, Cenk, before I go to you, the ceasefire is back on. I still think it's a little bit fragile considering the fact that we all know that Israel wants a regime change war. That's what they want. Now, their statements later in the day made me think maybe this will hold. I don't want to get too hopeful because every time I get too hopeful, things fall apart. But Cenk, I'm curious what you think.
No, I'm going to go way further. I loved it. It's the first time I've ever seen an American president do that in my lifetime. And so, okay, now the usual caveats, and then I'll get back to why I loved it. That doesn't mean I love Trump. That doesn't mean I agree with everything Trump does. That doesn't mean that I agreed with Trump when he dropped bombs on Iran. It doesn't mean that I have a mind meld with everything Trump does just because I agree with one thing he did. Okay, now back to our regular programming. Okay, so did you ever see Biden going, both these countries, Israel and Iran, are effing around, right? No, he would never say that about Israel. And so him yelling at Israel is just unprecedented. I mean, show me an American president who yelled at Israel in my lifetime.
NBC News reported today that the Israelis were stunned by
yes, okay. And so, look, guys, it's not just standard caveats. It's true. He started the war in the first place. He shouldn't have done that, right? He shouldn't have dropped the bombs. And I was furious with him. And we were on tape. You saw it when it happened. When he does terrible things, you massively criticize him, right? Now, when he's doing the right thing and going, okay, well, now we're going to do a ceasefire. And Israel, this ceasefire also applies to you. Then you go, okay, attaboy, finally an American president, right? Because every time there's a ceasefire, if you don't know this, Israel breaks it. Is it every single time? No. Is it almost every time? Yes, okay? So what Israel did this time was the same as they've always done. They're like, oh, ceasefire, great. We'll get to keep bombing him. They dropped 100 bombs on Tehran after the ceasefire. That's why Trump was furious.
Right.
He said, he's like, I said ceasefire. So, I mean, we're gonna give you the details. He called Netanyahu, etc., right? But for an American president to say, no, Israel was wrong, because the framing of the question, the media as always was like, are you gonna yell at Iran for breaking the ceasefire? And that's when Trump said, no, they both broke it, and I'm more mad at Israel. And I've never seen it.
I've never seen it either. Yeah, so
right. Normally, what an American president would do is, yes, Iran broke the ceasefire. They'd lie on behalf of Israel. They say, yes, Iran broke the ceasefire. We hate Iran. We're thinking of going back and bombing them again. And of course, Israel's right about everything. The very fact that an American president is saying that Israel is wrong is unprecedented, and it's an enormous relief. He could turn around any minute now, but for now, I'll take it.
Okay, so luckily the ceasefire appears to be holding for now. Okay, so as of this morning, the Wall Street Journal reported that Israel confirmed the ceasefire, saying that it had achieved its war aims, having removed a dual existential threat from Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. So they want to claim victory, and if that's what we need to allow them to do, just so they like step back and stop warring with Iran, great. Yes, you guys won. You guys did everything you wanted to do. Iran's foreign minister had said that his country would stop its attacks as long as Israel stopped theirs. In addition to that, and much to the chagrin of neoconservatives like Mark Levin, Trump made clear that the US was not seeking regime change in Iran. Now remember, over the weekend, he flirted with the idea of regime change in Iran, but I think something happened between then and now. Likely a contingent of his supporters were like, we didn't vote for this. You said that you weren't going to start new wars. This is a new war. So he might have backed off for that reason, but we don't know for sure, obviously. Israel has lifted nearly all wartime restrictions on civilian movement and economic activity in Israel. And the Israeli airport authority said Ben Gurion and Haifa airports are returning to full activity. They wouldn't do that if they intended to start bombing Iran again. But what should be concerning is what the Wall Street Journal also reported about how Israel is now going to shift its attention back to Gaza. Now, let me be clear, the slaughter has continued in Gaza, that hasn't stopped. Every single day, there's new reports about dozens of civilians getting shelled at, shot, killed by IDF soldiers. And you also have the chief of staff for the IDF saying, we have concluded a significant phase. Now the focus shifts back to Gaza to bring the hostages home and to dismantle the Hamas regime. So I'm worried about things getting even more brutal for Palestinians in Gaza. We can talk about that in just a minute. But Cenk, I was unfortunately juggling my mom in the hospital and the news today. But tell me about the conversation that Trump had with Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah, the sources from both mainstream media and MAGA media saying that he ripped Netanyahu a new a-hole.
Yes.
Okay, and not like when Biden would fake go, oh, I am so mad at you. How big do you want the check to be, right? Now, to be fair to Biden, he did not want to attack Iran, right? So fair is fair on all of that. So now, in terms of what's the next part of this is, I'm really worried about it. So the good news is that it appears as Israel actually does want to stop the war with Iran, which I'm super afraid to say because, again, they could change any second now, and they usually love war. And they leaked intel today, not Israel. Somebody leaked it from our intelligence, but half the time that's usually fake Israeli intelligence. Either way, I don't know if it's real or fake, but they say, oh, I don't think we got all the uranium. I think I'm not saying we got to go back, but CNN is reporting that, and the pundits are going, oh, we got to go back. We didn't get all the uranium.
God, they're the worst.
Right, so it's possible that Israel doesn't really want peace, and they might want to keep.
No, it's not, Cenk.
No. Let me finish. Yeah, I hear you. No, there's two potential objectives that they have, right? Well, they've stated those two objectives, so they're not potential. So the question is, are they going to try to pursue both or only one of them, right? And why would they only pursue one of them? One of their objectives was not the nuclear stuff. They don't have a nuke. They knew that they weren't going to have a nuke. It was for regime change. So they didn't get regime change in Iran. They did destroy those facilities and they struck back, but are they satisfied with that, or are they going to get greedy and push and push? But the second objective, don't lose track of this, is a bigger objective for Israel, which is, hey, I just destroyed Hamas. The whole idea of dismantling, literally all Hamas leaders are dead. Okay, they destroyed Hezbollah. Literally all of Hezbollah's leaders are dead. So they have new leaders because that's what happens when you kill their leaders, right? But they decimated them as much as they could possibly decimate them. They cleared out Western Syria, they cleared out Southern Lebanon, and now they've cleared out any offensive capabilities of Iran. So now, militarily, there's no one to defend the Palestinians.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
yes.
So now you could say, hey, they shouldn't have defended them that way, and it's terrorism, and it's awful, etc. Okay, no problem, okay? But that is what was happening. And so now without that, Israel thinks free reign, total ethnic cleansing, drive them into the desert. And this is, again, not speculation, it's not anti-Semitic. Their cabinet voted on it. And if it's anti-Semitic, then their cabinet is anti-Semitic. Because they voted on it that they're going to conquer Gaza and take all of it for Israel to set up greater Israel, right?
Yes, yep.
So now they think, okay, now we've decimated any defense they might have had. and Trump will let us do whatever we want as long as we're not bothering him. So now we get to finish the genocide, okay? And so that is probably their number one motive and why they don't mind backing off from Iran at this point. But like I said, they might get greedy and go, nah, we want both. We want regime change and to ethnically cleanse Gaza. So they might agitate for more war. So we don't know that yet, and we'll see how the developments are going. But you could tell that Netanyahu was relatively okay with the ceasefire. And by the way, also because he wasn't gonna listen to it. He thought that, ceasefire means they stop attacking, and the American president lies for me and I get to keep attacking, right? So he didn't expect that Trump would say, no, you stop too. He was like genuinely shocked by that. So, okay, but it seems like he might not mind backing away. How do I know that? Because Mark Levin, who basically is, he's Israel first, obviously. He's a neocon,
Yes,
he's a war hawk, etc.
Yep.
So he was like, this is terrible. I hate the word ceasefire, right? And then afterwards, he put out a tweet going, I so hate it, but Netanyahu says it's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Shut up, bitch.
Yeah. So since he's a little puppy dog bitch for Netanyahu, when he goes, it's okay, that means Netanyahu's told him, hey, go tell sucker Americans that it's okay. I'm now delivering a message through you, but you're American. Go get him, Mark. They still think you're an American. That's hilarious. Go ahead.
Now, back to Trump's motivations and what might have persuaded him. Polling indicated that Americans felt a certain way about going to war with Iran, bombing Iran. Let's take a look at what our good friend Harry Enton had to say about it.
Things are moving quite quickly, but these are initial readings, and I will say from a historical perspective, I am surprised that the net approval rating is so low on these strikes, and it's in two different polls. It's our CNN SSRS poll, 12 points underwater, 1 thumbs down. How about the Reuters Ipsos poll? Look at that, the exact same reading, -9 points underwater, 2 thumbs down. Normally these airstrikes rate quite highly, but this one, you go back through history, it rates as the lowest that I could possibly find on the historical record.
How about Republican opinion on this?
Yeah, I think there's this idea, okay, maybe the MAGA base wouldn't necessarily like this. Look, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party. That's what I think is so important to note. GOP on the US airstrikes in Iran, 76% in the average of the two polls approve, compared to just 18% who disapprove. Now, I will note that is a bit higher than Donald Trump's disapproval rating within the Republican Party, but overall, Republicans are with Donald Trump on this. Tucker Carlson be darned.
Tucker Carlson be darned. Now, I wish that same poll got into the idea of a protracted or prolonged war with Iran over their alleged nuclear program, which it was never really about their nuclear program. How do Republican voters feel about a regime change war? I still believe that the majority of Republican voters probably would back a regime change war in Iran. But I think the percentage who would not back it would increase significantly if we're talking about a long forever war in an effort to change the regime in Iran.
Yeah. Look, no. This is one I've given Harry Enton a lot of credit before, but this is one where he's massively biased. I don't know if it's him or CNN, but it's comical. So first off, he's like, I don't know why it's so low. I mean, what the hell? Of course we should bomb Iran. Harry, you're saying it out loud. Like we can hear you when you say, I don't know why it's so low. I need it to be higher, attack. CNN's telling me in my ear, attack. Okay, but that's not even the big tell. The big tell was in the second poll. They said in a combined average of CNN and Reuters, and I was checking the bottom as he was saying that to see what the source was, because I know in the CNN poll, more Republicans disagree with Trump. They did an average to lessen the effect of their own poll.
To be fair, every time we use a Harry Enton clip, he does do averages.
No.
Doesn't he?
No, he sometimes does a poll, and he did it on this issue too. And then he'll say, and most of the polls are like this. Sometimes he'll use averages. A lot of times he'll use a single poll. I haven't seen him combine just 2 polls like that. To be fair, they were on the same issue.
Right.
I could see why he would combine them, but like I noticed that the CNN poll came out more MAGA disagreeing with Trump, and I remember thinking, because we covered this once before, I wonder if they'll report that. And what did they do? They didn't report it by itself. They put it together with the Reuters poll to drive up the number. Because what they're basically saying is, now Donald Trump, if you want to make your base happy, still attack Iran. I mean, attacking Iran is a really, really good idea. I don't know why these overall numbers are low. But remember, among your base, not bad, not bad. Keep going, keep going. Come on, man, come on. You're being super obvious.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, the same CNN that we showed you yesterday, immediately brought on a general to say, Trump was brilliant and decisive, and these strikes are great. Oh, yeah. And I saw another clip just earlier today where they had this hilarious thing. They're like, Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's in one of our stories today. Marjorie Taylor Greene seems to be splitting and saying that the real MAGA is against the war, and she's attacking neocons. And then CNN goes to a neocon pundit, and the pundit goes, there are no neocons.
Right.
And MAGA does whatever Trump wants, and Trump is for the war. Okay, okay. So
why don't we do this? Why don't we take a break, come back, and we're gonna show you that clip. You're gonna see exactly how it went down. It is an incredible story. There is that split in the Republican Party, the anti-war versus the pro-war, and we're gonna provide the proof. We'll be right back.
They dropped the load, the biggest load that we've seen.
All right, back on TYT. So a ton of comments to get through. A lot of them are great, and some of them are challenging, and I want to do those even more. First, Christina Lisa Brown said, love, peace, blessings to Anna and her fam. Thank you for saying that, Christina. This is on Super Chat. Brickhouse Mama 98 said, I watch Kyle and Crystal and TYT. It just seems like Cenk is more combative with leftists than the right. I agree more with Cenk overall, but why not afford the same tone to our friends than we do with Republicans?
Can I explain it real quick? I know I'm in a, I think it's because we get attacked by the left a lot, and it's not just like, oh, we disagree with you. It's your character is wanting. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you respond to the people who attack you, and the left attacks us the most.
No, that's true, but it's beyond that, because the right attacks us on a whole bunch of things too. If you read my X comments, oh my God, the right attacks me in 1,000 ways.
But they attack us on things we actually believe, whereas the left attacks us on things they think we believe.
They're making up. Yeah, I got you. But specifically, when I'm in the interviews, and you can see this with your own eyes, you can go back and watch the old ones or the new ones that come up, right? I never lose my cool unless the other person is attacking me and not letting me respond. So it's not about left or right for me when I'm in the middle of an interview, okay? So like Lex Friedman never interrupts, gives me an opportunity to answer, then asks the next question. Agree or disagree, I don't even know what Lex's positions are, but we have a civil conversation. Every time somebody has a civil conversation, I'm civil back. I'm not gonna randomly yell from no reason out of nowhere. It's just, and the number one place you see this is not with Colin Crystal, it's with Piers, it's on Piers Morgan. When an Israeli, the minute I start talking, they start talking over me, so that I can't get my points out. And I'm like, okay, if you're gonna talk over me, then I'm gonna talk over you. And trust me, I'm gonna be louder than you, okay? So that's why, and Kyle and Crystal, I don't think that they were trying to do it. I don't think they were trying to agitate me, but they constantly talked over me, interrupted me, and yelled at me. So then I couldn't get my point out unless I raised my voice. So I'm just giving back what I'm receiving, that's why. I'm not because I'm particularly hostile to them. I just match the tone of the interviewer or the debater, that's all. Joe Hiker writes in, Cenk, they're guilty of what you used to be guilty of. We think you're a racist because you voted for Trump. That's a quote from me. Joe, see, that's a legitimate criticism. Yeah. I did say that, right? And I think that is the wrong approach. But and by the way, it's okay to learn from things. And by the way, part of my book, I attack Republican voters. And so, and it's true, it's factual. If you read the chapter 2 of my book, chapter 3, I'm sorry, it's literally called Why Republicans Suck, okay? And justice is coming. So, but especially after you lose the popular vote, to try to, what it'll do is drive voters away. So even if correct, it's the wrong strategy at this time. But overall, I realized, no, it's not even correct. Yes, some of their voters are that way. But generally speaking about all voters in that way is not accurate and is definitely not helpful. So I was wrong to say that earlier on strategy grounds alone, let alone everything else. Okay, Colin Gribben said, it's funny how Trump, after getting back in office, is discovering things that literally everyone else in America knew, that Israel is partially responsible for provoking conflicts and that Putin has no interest in peace. Now that is a very accurate statement. TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Sarah Ganam. Sarah, thanks for joining. She hit the join button below the video on YouTube. We appreciate it. TYT.com/join is amazing. Please do that. You could also hit the subscribe button for free and ring the bell for free as well. All that helps the show. We appreciate you guys. Anna.
Let's get to our next story.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has to be one of the dumbest people to ever serve in the House of Representatives. The stupidity that comes out of that woman's mouth is hard to imagine.
I can't believe that Fox News allows one of their hosts to go around and call me names on his social media. That is so unprofessional, and it really speaks to what kind of media company Fox News is. His screeching is absolutely unbearable, but I think Fox News needs to reel him in.
I think his screeching is hilarious, and I sometimes watch for comedic effect, honestly. But who you just heard from is Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican congresswoman, speaking about Mark Levin, a neocon who has never met a war, especially in the Middle East, that he didn't love, and has been pushing for a regime change war in Iran on behalf of Israel. Now, this right-wing feuding continues, this time between war hawk Mark Levin and MAGA darling Marjorie Greene, and their battle is reaching a fever pitch this week, especially as you have Mark Levin agitating for this ongoing war in Iran and Greene calling for peace. So on Matt Gaetz' show, Greene pressed Fox News to basically reel in Levin after he called her a shameless nitwit for opposing bombing Iran's nuclear sites. And as we'll get into shortly, Levin also would love for the war to expand beyond just bombing nuclear facilities. Greene also argued that the MTG Gates Carlson side of the party was more representative of MAGA as a whole. So take a look.
Reaction to Mark Levin saying we aren't real MAGA because we don't want a regime change war in Iran.
He was a never Trumper from the beginning. He hated Donald Trump. He was totally against him and tried to stop him from becoming president. But yet now somehow Mark Levin is the voice of MAGA. I don't think so. Matt, you and I, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, all of us that have been fighting hard to stay on these America First policies and stay out of foreign wars, we're MAGA. We're the voice of MAGA, and the people totally agree with us. So, it doesn't matter what Mark Levin actually has to say. People don't watch his show. I don't know anyone that watches his show.
Again, some people do watch to laugh at him, but Levin did not take kindly to what Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say there. He writes on X, MTG, God, you were stupid, and you keep banging your head against the wall. Thankfully, the president of the United States ignored you and hit the Iranian nuclear sites. You seem very upset about it. I'm not going away, you're on my radar. To which Greene responded, this is extremely sick and disturbing. Please read to the end. Mark, you have the exact same tone and language that the psychopaths use that send me death threats every single day. You should be fired from Fox News, and shame on Fox if they condone this. I am for peace. I oppose war, including wars Israel wages. Should I feel that my life is in danger now too? What about President Trump, who strongly rebuked Israel this morning for continuing to attack Iran? And Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about one thing. Levin isn't about peace. And Tucker Carlson, by the way, exposed something pretty interesting about him on his podcast recently. Let's take a quick look at that, and then we'll go to Cenk.
Nobody's dragging us into anything. It's not the Jews. It's not Israel again. No. Long-range, intercontinental, ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads are for you and me and your children and your grandchildren.
That's what's airing on Fox. By the way, that same person, Mark Levin, who was a totally minor player in Fox World up until recently, I can tell you firsthand, suggested today that we send nuclear weapons to Ukraine too. But I should just make it clear, in the last clip that we played, he said intercontinental ballistic missiles armed with nuclear warheads are meant for you. They're going to kill you, the mullahs. Iran doesn't have intercontinental ballistic missiles. It doesn't have nuclear warheads. Like, all of this is, it's deranged.
Yeah, pretty deranged.
You know what else is deranged? Pretending that they are not disagreeing. A lot of people on the left say there's no disagreement.
No, the disagreement's real. It is.
I mean, like, it's obviously real. It's the most, Piers Morgan just did a whole episode on the split in the MAGA coalition. But if you listen to other shows, they'll tell you, don't believe your lying eyes. I don't know. Well, some of them, not all of them, also told you that Joe Biden was young. Okay, so yeah, no, there's clearly a huge split here. And the split's not difficult to ascertain, right? What's going on here? The Israel first crowd always wants us to do whatever Israel wants, right? And Mark Levin is a despicable person on 100 different levels, including when he says, oh, it's against Israel, it's against the Jews. No, don't conflate the two. You're gonna drive up anti-Semitism, you schmuck.
Exactly.
Right? No, nobody's saying anything against the Jews. And as I've said a billion times, some of the best fighters for peace in America are Jewish Americans. So this has nothing to do with the Jews. But when you bring it in, you're ironically doing the anti-Semitic trope of all Jews have dual loyalty to Israel. No, brother, that's you, not other Jews, okay? You're doing projection because you would love to serve Israel. So why don't you move to Israel and sit in Tel Aviv and tell us all these wonderful things? But leave my Jewish friends and family out of this, okay? You got no right to talk about them like that. Okay, so now you go to Tucker, and I was writing it down as he said it. Wait, Iran doesn't have intercontinental ballistic missiles or nukes or warheads. So we're all about to get murdered by weapons they don't have. Why? Because this is, and now this is, again, it's literal. It's not some sort of trope or anything. Israel's leaders, and predominantly Benjamin Netanyahu, for the last 33 years is on tape saying they're gonna kill us all, Iran is gonna nuke America, America's in danger. Any minute now, any minute now, any minute now, for 33 straight years. So obviously Israel wanted us to attack Iran, and Mark Levin wants us to do whatever Israel wants. And Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene are saying something that's logical if you're a right winger. When your movement is called America First, they're saying, wait, why don't we take care of America first and have a conversation about, wait, does this help us or not help us? How does it help us? Let's just talk it through. And that's when Mark Levin and all the Israel First guys jump in and go,
in fact, I want to just show you another perfect example of this. And look, oftentimes when we talk about the pro-war propaganda, it's usually in the context of Fox News. And to be fair, Fox News has had wall-to-wall pro-war propaganda ever since the idea of bombing Iran or doing a regime change war in Iran started. With that in mind, though, also consider that CNN likes to air this type of pro-war propaganda quite often as well, and you're gonna get a little taste of it right here. The individual that you're gonna hear from is conservative commentator Jonah Goldberg responding to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's watch.
She posted on on X, it feels like a complete bait and switch to please the neocons, Walker's military-industrial complex contracts, and neocon TV personalities that MAGA hates and who were Trumpers.
Yeah, well, that's stupid. I mean, part of the thing is We just, what, a month ago, Laura Loomer purged the last alleged neocons from the White House. There are no neocons, whatever she thinks a neocon is, other than some sort of perfidious bagel-snarfing warmonger. There are none in the White House, right? They've all been purged. Anyone who's suspected of being a neocon has been purged. This isn't the Nikki Haley people making these calls. This is Trump and his team doing this.
Okay, so Jonah Goldberg is playing dumb because as we know, and as we've seen through her posts on X, Laura Loomer is a neocon and loves neocons and lied about the fact that she has a problem with neocons and got Trump to purge them. If you remember, we were skeptical about that whole narrative, right? But at the same time, who serves in Trump's administration, I've learned doesn't actually matter. Okay, what matters is who spoke to Trump last. Because remember, Trump had dinner or lunch, I can't remember, it doesn't matter. He met with Mark Levin right before he started making really bad decisions in the Middle East.
Yeah, of course. So, no, that was hilarious because they read a quote about neocon TV personalities. And then a neocon TV personality comes out and says there are no neocons. Right. And there are none in the White House. And there are none in the White House. Why? Because Laura Loomer purged them. Laura Loomer is a neocon. She's Israel first.
100%.
So I mean, what a hilarious liar Jonah Goldberg is. I watched the rest of it. Then he went on to say, you know what, I normally disagree with Trump, but this strike against Iran was a really good idea. So, oh really, now that he did something Israel wants, a neocon TV personality like you decided that you all of a sudden like Donald Trump.
Bingo.
Funny how that works. Against Israel's interest, oh, terrible, oh, I can't stand him. In favor of Israel's interest, Donald Trump is so good. Yeah. There are no neocons.
So let's do Jonah Goldberg a favor, okay? You're about to hear from Mark Levin, the guy who met with Trump right before Trump decided to engage in this conflict with Iran. So Levin, not so happy about the ceasefire that was reached between Israel and Iran recently. In fact, why don't we hear what he had to say?
I hate this word ceasefire. I really do. The president hated it a few days ago too. What's needed now is this, in my humble opinion. Iran should be forced to sign a surrender document, unconditional surrender. They lost their nukes, they've lost their air force, they have no ground-to-air protection. China didn't step in, Russia didn't step in, not a single Arab country stepped in. The supreme Nazi is hiding in a bunker, much like Adolf Hitler did. Adolf Hitler wasn't thrown a lifeline. He was going to be killed, so he committed suicide.
So he hates the word ceasefire. He loves war. Very, very upset. You know, he's
like, there are no neocons.
There are no neocons.
And there are no neocons on TV or radio either, apparently. I mean, look, that was hilarious in a couple of ways. So first of all, he says, well,
they should be forced into an unconditional surrender.
Okay, so obviously they're never gonna agree to that. And hence, permanent war. That means you have to have ground troops for them to unconditionally surrender. You have to find the Nazi in his bunker. And so you have to go in with American troops.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Okay, hey, why doesn't Israel go in with their troops?
That's anti-Semitic. You can't have Israelis dying. The Israelis are worth 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 American, Arab, lives.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, Mark. That's what I thought. No, you want us to fight this war for you. So the minute that Trump does a ceasefire, remember this is the same Mark Levin for the last couple of days as Trump did the bombing was like,
you have to listen to what Trump says. Trump is MAGA. Trump defines MAGA. Trump is America first. And you have to listen to Trump.
The minute Trump says ceasefire,
don't listen to Trump. Listen to Israel instead.
Okay, we got it, Mark. We got it. For God's sake, move to Tel Aviv where you'll be happy, they'll be happy, everybody will be happy. Look, to say that Jews have dual loyalty is absurd, absurd. Jon Stewart talked about it the other day. He's like, I have loyalty to Jersey. That's where I grew up. That's my homeland, right? Mm-hmm. I feel the same way, right? And our ethnic backgrounds are different. Our cultural backgrounds are the same because we both grew up in New Jersey, right? So, but for guys like Mark, they can't understand that because they do have dual loyalty. And they think like following Israel's orders is paramount, paramount. Now, you're allowed to have that opinion, and I'm sure there's some Norwegian Americans who think Norway's more important than America.
Norway's doing well.
It happens. It happens.
Norway doesn't need any help. Okay?
Yeah, don't judge anybody else based on Mark Levin's comments or actions. But he definitely is not anywhere near America first. And lastly, CNN, at least for now, CNN is the one who brought on Jonah Goldberg.
Exactly.
I just wanted to, Jonah Goldberg, Mark Levin, et cetera, are neocons, I get it. But CNN doesn't label him a neocon. They let him pretend as if he's objective and then says this absurd Trumpian type of thing where he says there are no neocons, and CNN doesn't challenge him at all because CNN is kind of neocon. That's why they're playing around with their polls. That's why all of a sudden they've got breaking news. We did not destroy the nuclear facilities. We have to go back in for more. This is the same CNN that drove us into the Iraq war.
Abby Phillips's show, which is in the primetime slot, is performing really well. And I don't think that's an accident. I think it's performing well because she consistently has a panel of diverse opinions debating each other each night. And
I'm shocked they let her do that.
I love it. By the way, it's the most interesting show on CNN. It is. It just is.
Yeah, because you're at least exchanging opinions.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, a progressive sneaks on there or a populist sneaks on there. A populist sneaking onto CNN is unheard of. They, generally speaking, they despise populists, and they don't know that. They just think like, they don't have credibility. They don't have elite status. Please go away. A neocon, you have such elite status. Right. Really, do they? How did they earn it? Oh, did you know that Jonah Goldberg was part of a magazine that sold to 87 or maybe 88 different people? Everyone online has audiences 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times larger than Bill Kristol, Jonah Goldberg, or any of these neocons.
Yeah,
yet they have credibility according to CNN. But hey, at least they're doing one show.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about podcasts, okay? Let's talk about podcasts. Theo Von has Sassy Massey on, okay? Let's talk about their conversation. And a conversation I did not expect to hear on Tucker Carlson's show. Full-blown anti-war conversation with a former Fox News host. We'll talk about who that host is, what they're saying, and more when we come back.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcast and cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
Indisputable exclusive. Exclusive, disputable, exclusive. We brought you this first. No other news agency has this video. No other news agency has this story.
Every week on Indisputable, we do original, exclusive, investigative reporting you'll find nowhere else.
Our reports have been viewed by millions. Hosted by Sean King, Ben Crump, Senator John Ossoff.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
We catching these cases on camera. Just imagine the things that we don't see.
Our groundbreaking investigations and exclusive interviews bring you the real voices no one else wants you to hear. We tell the stories.
Imagine a prison that is so racist, the corrections officers contact me. That is a life or death situation being created. A black woman who was driving for Uber was allegedly assaulted by a white male passenger. After we got involved, roughly 24 hours later, the police all of a sudden opened up an investigation. What was going through your mind when bullets were simply flying inside of your vehicle?
Honestly, I thought I was going to die.
Did these officers ever say that you fit the description of somebody they were looking for? Did they say that?
Never.
Okay, that means they lied.
And we want you to be part of our truth-telling movement. Send pictures and video of stories no one else is telling and a 1 or 2 paragraph summary of the story to Indisputable's exclusive tip line at indvideos@tyt.com.
If you have more information about what's happening at this particular facility, please let me know.
Together, we're challenging the system, and together, we're making a difference.
I have the entire background to this story, and it is going to make your blood boil.
Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, unveiling the truth, empowering the people. Weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific.
All right, so you got a message for John Idarola?
Tell him to be nice to me.
Okay, that's a tough ask.
Be nice to me.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
Well, I gotta say, I've been kind of impressed with podcaster Theo Von and his willingness to speak out in regard to what he's been seeing in Gaza. Just recently, he was approached by someone who asked, if you could say one thing, what would you say? He said, free Palestine, so I love it. Now, there's another story involving Theo Von and Thomas Massie that I wanted to get into. So without further ado, let's get into it.
It starts to feel like America is just a shell company, an LLC for Israel.
I wouldn't send him a dime. Like, that's my position. I don't think whatever we're getting isn't worth it. And don't ask me to articulate the benefit because I think the cost is greater than the benefit. Everybody in Gaza is, at this point, has to hate Israel, right? And by extension, those bombs, when they see American politicians go over there and like sign the frickin' bombs that are going to kill women and children.
Thomas Massie is absolutely correct about that, and that's the gentleman you heard in that clip. Yesterday, Representative Thomas Massie, of course, joined Theo Von for a wide-ranging interview that also happened to touch on the topic of Israel and what's currently going down in Gaza. Now, we'll start with Massie's thoughts on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Let's watch him talk about the sheer scale of death and destruction.
What do we get from Israel, do you feel like?
We got a lot of countries that hate us, is one of the things we get.
Well, especially right now with this stuff in Gaza, I think it's Israel's. It's one of the worst PR campaigns I've ever seen in my life. If they're even, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, I just don't, it gives their government this extremely evil look to me, and I think to a lot of people,
Well, rough numbers, there are 2 million people in Gaza and 50,000 have been killed. That's 2.5%. Like they've killed 1 in 40 people in Gaza. If you did that in the United States, if you did 2.5% of 350 million, it'd be almost 10 million people dead in the United States. Everybody in Gaza is at this point related to somebody who's been killed. Like at least a first cousin you had killed. And then if you say how many have been maimed, it's probably 3 or 4 times that.
And I want to add to what Massey is saying there, because as he was talking about how everyone in Gaza who's still alive knows at least one family member who died as a result of this current genocide, I couldn't help but think about how Israel tends to respond to people who are openly critical of the genocide that's happening in Gaza. I think about people like Miss Rachel, right? Miss Rachel, who creates children's content, who is absolutely disgusted by the number of children who have died, number of children who have been maimed as a result of this genocide. She hasn't said anything even close to anti-Semitic. She cares about the kids and she gives the kids a voice. And she's been dealing with threats. She's been dealing with all sorts of horrible treatment from, the defenders of Israel. And if you're worried about the way the world perceives you, maybe don't terrorize people who are speaking out against the slaughter of children.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. First of all, a lot of truth telling there. And again, I was on the air before the Iraq War, Young Turks, the oldest show in internet history. And we never got any of this from Republicans. We never got any of this from any other media. It was just us and Democracy Now! Every other media was massively pro-war. They would never allow someone to say, hey, what do we get from Israel? Nothing but enemies. I wouldn't give Israel another dollar. These things were verboten. You were never allowed to say that. And they could say, oh, Cenk, that's so wrong. It was just a coincidence that it was never said on air for about 18 years straight. Okay, maybe it was a coincidence, okay? That it was perfectly legal, just nobody wanted to say it, right? And by legal, of course, what I mean is groupthink, the etiquette of that particular news organization. And everybody in the building knew, you're not allowed to criticize Israel. If you do, your career will be in massive jeopardy. They could pretend that that's wrong, but ask anyone in media, when you get them alone, is it true? They're like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna say anything against Israel. Are you nuts, right? So, okay, so now we're in a different world where people are actually saying things that are true and critical of Israel. So, I mean, Theo Von's kind of like an innocent guy.
He is, that's what I love him, but that's what I love because he gives the perspective of a normie, right? He's not a super hyper political guy. He's just seeing what's happening and he's telling us what he thinks about it.
Yeah, and I know Democrats now hate him and everyone in the brosphere because, oh my God, they had Trump on or they
everyone hates Democrats, so who cares what they hate?
No, I got you. But Theo Von is not some sort of weirdo, evil MAGA guy who's part of a conspiracy to lie to everyone to get Trump elected.
No, he's a normie.
He's a normie. So a lot of times he doesn't know all the intricate details of the politics, right? And he looked at it before the election like, yeah, the Democrats seem really fake, right? And they do seem really fake because they are. Now that doesn't mean that you should have voted for Trump, but that's the same kind of like, and you could say, oh, that's the direction where it went badly, right? And that we don't agree with him on that. But the good news is that when he goes in the direction of Israel, he's like, I don't know, it looks kind of evil that they're killing all those people. Yeah, that's right. So sometimes you need someone who is not like the world's greatest expert on news to just look at it with a fresh set of eyes.
Exactly,
right?
Yes, yep.
And so, and when Massey says no more money to Israel, there's a faction of MAGA, definitely not all of MAGA, but a faction that goes, hell yeah, the America First faction, right? Now, if Trump said it, if Trump said no more money to Israel, that's it, we're keeping the money home. Which by the way, I talked to MAGA, so like I know that's like terrible, but what it happens is then you wind up learning their opinion. And so whether it's for good or for bad, and a lot of times it's for bad, but in this case, a lot of MAGA doesn't realize that Trump didn't end funding to Israel. They think he did. Okay.
What? Why would they think that?
Because they're misinformed, because they watch right-wing shows, and right-wing shows say, oh, we cut all funding to the whole world.
No.
They never say except Israel,
right? That's
and
true.
Egypt.
That's true.
Right?
Yep.
Since they never say that, a lot of MAGA thinks he already did cut funding to Israel.
Right.
Okay, so now if Trump were to actually do that, come out and say, no, that's it. I said no funding to any country, including Israel, and we're not sending them any more money for this. Oh my God, he'd be enormous. Like all of MAGA would agree with him instantly. Then it would go from a faction to all of them. So that's the whole right wing. We already had most of the left wing. The only people that would be left are the people on TV, right?
The neocons.
And Washington. So it would be the politicians and the television hosts versus the rest of us. And that's a battle I want. And then, by the way, that's not an easy battle to win, because one of the problems with Trump is that he watches TV and only TV.
And he loves Fox News, even still, yes.
So he'll go on Fox News, and Fox News will say, oh yeah, 98% of the country says you should be Israel's servant. And he'll be like, I don't know, that's what the people want, right? So TV in Washington versus all of the rest of us is a battle that I've been waiting for my whole life.
So with that in mind, let's talk about money, because money in politics serves a huge purpose in regard to getting our politicians to support Israel's causes. And Thomas Massie weighed in on that during this conversation. Take a look.
It's a weird amalgamation of combined interests. There's a military-industrial complex that is all in for everything AIPAC is for. And before I banned AIPAC from my office, we used to have conversations that would go something like this. Oh, you should be for the foreign aid that goes to Israel because it all comes back to the United States in the form of military spending. We're buying it all from American contractors. And be like, no, that's not a convincing argument to me. America doesn't make money off of war. A few people in America do make money off of war, and they make a lot of money off of war. So they want the music to keep going. They don't want the music to stop.
I think I'm gonna donate money to Massie's campaign.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far.
Why?
Wait till you see the rest of the things he thinks.
No, he thinks all sorts of things I disagree with, okay? But in that district, it's gonna be a Republican.
Oh, that's
so. Do I prefer a neoconservative pro-war Republican over Massie? Hell no, I don't.
Yeah, no, I got you. I wouldn't go as far as giving him money, but I appreciate that he's honest. And look, that's the second thing that he just opened up that we never talk about, which is the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
So they're like, again, I mean, this is a point I made on the Young Turks dozens of times, but to see a right-wing congressman make it on a popular online show so that it reaches not just the left wing, but a lot of normies, it's beautiful, right? Part of the reason why Israel's so strong is not because of like ridiculous anti-Semitic tropes about Jews control the world or whatever. No, you haven't met enough Jews. They don't. Half the time they can't control their own budget, okay, just as like friends of mine. But anyway, but what is true is the military-industrial complex is very much lined up with AIPAC. So they're like, okay, Israel keeps driving us into wars, and we make billions of dollars off those wars, sometimes trillions of dollars off of those wars. So that is a super powerful combo. There's a third group that doesn't get as much involved in the lobbying from what I've seen in the reporting, but that also benefits, and they're also super powerful lobby, and that's the oil companies. Because whenever there's like they don't want war in North Korea, that doesn't help anybody, right? But if war in the Middle East will also drive up oil prices, and it's the same cost, but a lot more profit for that same oil. So the combination of those three lobbies is overwhelming in Washington D.C. and super hard to fight. But you didn't even know you were fighting them until people like us and Massie started exposing them from the left and the right. And so now the battle is joined a little bit, make it a lot more interesting. Look, real quick, we have a poll here in the live chat. Will AIPAC become more or less influential in future elections? Because I mean, in 2024, they were the #1 donor to members of Congress. So if you're saying no, they'll melt away. Oh, you don't know AIPAC, right? So I don't know if they're going to be, more or less. I do know the popular opinion is now for the first time building against them, and that's great. Not because they're for Israel, but because I don't want any government controlling us. And so that brings us back to anti-Semitism. So quick point, because you mentioned Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel's a wonderful human being. And so she doesn't say anything about Jews or not Jews. She doesn't use any tropes. She doesn't do any of that, right? But but she's against the genocide. And I think these guys who are Israel first guys and neocons, they're making a huge mistake.
100%.
Because they're equating anti-genocide with anti-Semitism. Don't do that, don't do that. Because if you take out the antis, you're saying if you're for Jews, you're for genocide. No.
I never thought of it that way, but that is such a perfect way of framing it, right? That's why I get so irritated when they keep saying, oh, you're against the Jews. It's like, why are you defaming Jewish people? Because there's a lot of Jewish people who are not in favor of what's going on right now in Gaza.
Yeah, stop doing that. And it puts the dual loyalty trope in play. You guys are putting that in play, not us.
Similarly, a lot of the neocons who have been egging on wars in the Middle East and love what's happening in Gaza, they're not Jewish. John Bolton, not Jewish. Lindsey Graham, not Jewish. Dick Cheney, not Jewish. Like, what are we talking about here? All of those evangelicals who are like
Mike Huckabee,
who are like, yes, Mike Huckabee, salivating over the second coming of Christ, and all of those who didn't convert to their religion are going to be perished. Like,
yeah, and look, so I'm anti-genocide. I've spoken out against what the IDF is doing. The IDF wrote my name on a bomb, right? So then, if I criticize the IDF, it's because I hate Jews?
It's ridiculous.
No, of course not. It's because they're writing my name on a bomb that goes to murder women and children. So I think there's a pretty legitimate reason. So I think that the pro-Israel side is doing even more damage to Israel than they realize because of what Theo Von is saying. He's like, well, you guys are making yourselves look evil. How does that help?
Yeah.
And it's a great question, a simple question, but a great question.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about a former Fox News host who actually left Fox on his own terms and has a lot to say about his time over at Fox. We'll be right back.
Anti-Semitism.
All right, back to Super Chat. I can't even get out of Super Chat because so many good comments. Ridge Rock for now says, Theo Von would have gladly had Kamala Harris on his show, but like a damn fool, she didn't want to.
Yeah.
Is that Theo Von's fault or the Democrats' fault? Excellent point. It is definitely Kamala Harris's fault. Keshav Batra writes in, is it bad that I'm typically indifferent to politics and identify as someone in the middle who just wants an adult to run the country regardless of whether they're left or right? No, Keshav, that is not bad at all. That is perfectly fine, and don't let anyone tell you that that's bad. Yes, we want a smart, decent person to run the country that doesn't necessarily do 100% of left-wing ideology or 100% of right-wing ideology, by the way, or 100% of my ideology. We just want a grown-up who's compassionate, honest, strong, smart, and looks out for the American people and not for the donors. The donors are in charge, that's the problem. BC24 says Trump needs to cut all funding to Israel, here. Pod4 Studios says, Harry Anton comes off as disingenuous to me. No one is that enthusiastic in real life. Also, Bernie is saying the same thing Cenk is saying. The hate is weird.
I know, yeah, I know.
I agree. And whenever you ask them that, they get all flustered. They're like, because it's problematic that Bernie's saying almost identical things to what I'm saying. So that makes it awkward for people pretending to be in favor of Bernie, or they're not pretending. It just creates cognitive dissonance because they want to beat up on me and love Bernie. Anthony McClendon writes in, as he usually does with a great point, Trump doesn't care about Israel or Iran. He wants credit for bringing peace to the region. Netanyahu stole his moment. He might actually hold him accountable for his own selfish reasons. And then he ends with, I'll take it. Exactly, Tony, exactly. I'll take it. I don't care why he does it. I just want the right result. Oh, why did Donald Trump prevent hundreds of thousands of civilians in dying in a regime change war in Iran? I don't care. I just care that he stopped it, right? And if he restarts it, then I'll hate him for it. See, it depends on his actions. Megan Bramble says, thank you, Cenk and Anna. You guys have given me the confidence to be fiercely anti-war, no matter how much propaganda we're subjected to.
Damn right.
I love that, Megan, thank you. Titan says, I just don't understand this coddling narrative. We have to talk to these people who have huge audiences and hold all the political power in this country. Do we just yell from the void and die screaming? And I don't know, some people think that that's a real strategy, but they'll say, oh, you're strawmanning us. Okay, so what do you want to do? Yell louder. Okay, all right, but that's what he's saying.
By the way, I used to think that was the right strategy. And then after 18 years, I'm like, maybe I should try something different.
Yeah, you're as always. You're too tough on yourself. You didn't really believe that, but anyways, we could debate that another day. Becca writes in, but by the way, it's okay to say like, "Hey, we didn't get that right or not." Like I said earlier in the show about attacking the Trump voters earlier. Becca says, "I feel like if we had a multiple party system of all these podcasters and different journalists, would be so much more used to working in coalitions and not picking such dramatic sides." Yeah, that is definitely true because in a multiple party system, you have to find coalitions. Great point. Homer J. Simpson says, "I joined right as Jen grabs and yells balls." Well, Homer, good to have you. Nick Mon 55 says, "Candace Owens is 100% correct and principled on this topic. I've been open-minded and gave her a chance and was pleasantly surprised. And she's not backing down, and I respect that." Yeah, I do.
Anti-Semitism.
Back on TYT, checking out with you guys. Trevor Mozingo, Gun, and Kejav Batra all just joined by hitting that join button below. We appreciate it, guys. TYT.com is another way to join, and we appreciate that too. Annual membership gets you a couple of months off on TYT.com. Good way to do that. Or just ring the bell and subscribe as well to support the show. We appreciate you guys. All right, Anna.
All right, let's get right to our next story.
What's so hilarious, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised because they always accuse you of being exactly the way that they themselves are, is anyone who asks questions or disagrees is woke now. Have you noticed this? The woke right? So you're like, I'm not sure that we should have a war with Iran right now. And like, it seemed like there were a lot of problems here. And like people I know are dying of drug ODs. Shut up, racist, you're woke. It's like, wait, what? Or people who are clearly working on behalf of a foreign country accuse you of working on behalf of a foreign country. It's so amazing.
Tucker Carlson had former Fox News host Clayton Morris on his show, on his podcast, and it was an hour and a half of neocon bashing. It was incredible. And before we get to all the different elements of that conversation, which by the way covered the lies that persuaded Americans to support the preemptive war in Iraq, there was also a conversation about how neocons are actually liberals. I actually want to discuss that in a moment as well. I do want to address what you just heard in that clip because I too have been accused of being woke because I'm against supporting Israel based on identity politics, and I'm also against clearly what they're doing in Gaza and what they're doing in the West Bank. And so who called me woke? Well, Konstantin Kisin, who's one of the hosts over at Trigonometry, that's also a podcast. I was responding to criticism over my demeanor, how I handled myself on Piers Morgan's show yesterday. And I'm sorry, when you have an IDF spokesperson gaslighting the hell out of people and pretending like a genocide isn't a genocide, when you have him smiling and smirking as I'm talking about the slaughter of innocent people, I get a little offended by that. I get a little worked up. And so I wrote, polite debates with men who smirk as I bring up the slaughter of innocents is nonsensical, to which Konstantin Kisin says, woke is so back, baby, with a laughing emoji. So this whole thing about wokeness, I want to address it real quick. Wokeness is identity politics on steroids, okay? It's basically basing your opinion on the identity of the group that you're either defending or speaking out against. In this case, people like Konstantin Kisin, who, as far as I know, isn't American, isn't Israeli, but for whatever reason seems to be obsessed with providing cover for the genociders in Israel, thinks that it's woke to be concerned about said genocide, about the slaughter of innocent people. And what are you basing your opinion on other than the identity of the people that you are providing cover for, of the Israelis? For me, it doesn't matter if we're talking about civilian deaths on the Israeli side or the Palestinian side. Take a look at how I covered what happened on October 7th on this show. how enraged I was about the civilians that were slaughtered by Hamas, because those are human beings. I don't see them as any different than Palestinian civilians. But for whatever reason, for Konstantin Kisin, it's totally okay to value civilian lives on one side and just brush aside all of those tens of thousands of civilians who have been killed on the Palestinian side. That's identity politics on steroids. That's what's woke.
Yeah, so first of all, I think the whole conversation is nonsense, to be honest, because they just call whatever they're against woke. They're not even trying to make sense.
Which is what stupid people do.
Right.
Yeah.
But now the problem for them is that when they do it against people that are also on the right, like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they are exposed for being the dumbasses that they are. So they were oftentimes just as dumb when they accused everyone on the left of being woke.
Agreed,
and they'd say absurd things. Now this is slightly, it's a bit of a tangent, but it's a similar concept, which is they're like, oh, Kamala Harris is a communist and a Marxist. And you're like, she's a corporatist. She works for the corporate donors, which is terrible, but that's the opposite of Marxism and communism. Try to make sense, right? And so this woke thing is similar. They're like, oh, you're all woke. What does that mean, right? So in this case, though, if woke has any meaning at all, it's identity politics gone wrong, right?
Yes.
And so, okay, well, you guys are saying that we're not allowed to criticize Israel because we're anti-Semitic. So that's a different way of saying bigot or racist, right?
100%, yes.
So you're shutting down the conversation with identity politics. So if woke has any definition at all, it's that. So, and by the way, that is also not uncommon. This happens way more on the right, where they're guilty of something and they do projection. And Israel's also the king of this. They're like, oh my God, the Iranians are killing women and children in Israel. Like, you just killed like 40,000 women and children in Gaza, right? And so they're like, that is the worst kind of terrorism. I'm like, I kind of agree. And that's why I'm bothered you guys did it more. But they just keep on going. And in this case, they're like, oh, you're anti-Semite and you're a bigot and your voice should be shut down and you shouldn't be allowed to ever criticize Israel. That's why I don't do identity politics. No, that is identity politics. And if anything is woke, that's woke.
Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's move on to, you're gonna love this, Cenk. This is totally your wheelhouse. Probably after we come back from this video, I should just leave because you're gonna love this and you're gonna wanna talk about it forever. They get into the inner workings of corporate media and how they drum up support for war. Take a look.
MSNBC, we learned, had a 2-for-1 booking, official booking plan. That meant 2 pro-war voices for every 1 anti-war voice. It's such an important piece of this to have that propaganda piece of this, the manufacturing of consent for war.
Yeah.
And we have, again, a long history of this. You don't do it without the newspapers. You don't do it without the television stations. You don't do it without the Fox News or the CNNs, the MSNBCs.
Totally right.
I mean, CBS changed the name of their show to Showdown with Saddam. I'm Clayton Morris, host of Showdown with Saddam. We haven't attacked them yet. But that's the name of my show. Welcome. We're replacing Phil Donahue with Countdown Iraq. Like, so you're framing all of this ahead of time. The propaganda is there ahead of time, so it's all being laid out. It's basically, it becomes an inevitability that we are going to attack.
Exactly. The show should have been called, "What the hell does Saddam Hussein have to do with 9/11?"
Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's what we were saying on the air on the Young Turks before the war began and after the war began. So, and Anna's right, because this is literally chapter 5 of my book, Justice is Coming. It's called The Matrix, and it's about how corporate media is the #1 weapon for corporate rule. So whenever corporate interests are aligned, you will have MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News all agree. And we showed you a pretty spectacular case of that yesterday when we showed you all 3 cable news shows going, boy, Donald Trump, way to attack Iran. Same exact thing they did before the Iraq war. Now, if you're wondering why, well, there's a couple of reasons why. So as I explained in the book, and I mentioned Phil Donahue that Clayton Morris just mentioned there as well. what MSNBC did back then was anyone that was on the air that was against the war, they took them off.
Yeah.
Phil Donahue was their #1 rated show. They took him off the air because he was against the Iraq War. Ashley Banfield was this new star that they had stolen from another station. They were so proud of her. She covered 9/11, was a big up and coming star. She did a speech explaining the downsides of war. She didn't even state an opinion, but she just explained war is ugly and terrible, etc. She did that speech in Kansas off the air. They're like, that's it. Not only was she taken off the air, this is the amazing part. They wouldn't let her out of her contract so that she couldn't say that on anyone else's air. And then they moved her office into a closet so that everyone in the building can see if you speak out against war, you're gonna get stuffed into a closet.
It was so sick.
Okay.
It was so sick. It was so sick. I remember.
And then Jesse Ventura was on the show, and Jesse says a lot of wacky things, right? But he also says some things that are true, and that could happen. Same with Tucker. Tucker says a lot of wacky things, and he's right about Israel and war in this case, right? So, but Jesse explained something that I know is true because his co-host on the pilot for his MSNBC show was Ben Mankiewicz, my co-host at the time on the Young Turks, right? They gave him MSNBC gave him a $2 million contract, okay? Then after they gave him the contract, they realized he was anti-war. So they said, forget it, keep the money and we just don't go on air, okay?
Wow.
So now why did MSNBC do that back in the day? At the time, it was owned by GE that predominantly made its money as a defense contractor, okay? Which they never ever revealed on air. GE also made a killing in rebuilding Iraqi infrastructure. So they made money destroying the infrastructure and making the infrastructure. That's why TV was a tiny piece of their corporation. And that's why later they sold MSNBC. They didn't really care because it had gotten the job done. It served its purpose of marketing for their really profitable parts of GE, which is war making, right? And so a lot of those defense contractors are also advertisers on cable news.
Yes.
That's another incentive. Plus, the lying politicians are the #1 advertisers on cable news. Because, for example, in this election cycle, we spent $16 billion. Most of it went into mainstream media. So all those politicians are their clients, their sponsors, their brands that they're backing. So those politicians are owned by the military-industrial complex, AIPAC, big drug companies, etc. So when they go and lie and say, oh, we want war, war is great, they go, oh, this is our top client. They want war, we want war. Yes, war is great. You showdown with Saddam. So that's how that sausage gets made.
So I want to go to the next clip in regard to Tucker Carlson getting reprimanded when he worked over at CNN. Before he worked at Fox, he did work at CNN. He ended up getting fired. And he talks about one of the things he did that got him into a lot of trouble. Let's go to D3.
I made the mistake of reading Osama bin Laden's manifesto on CNN. Not an endorsement of Osama bin Laden, obviously.
Right, but it's news.
Well, I just think it's important to know why people do things. You can disagree completely, but I think it's important to be honest about other people's motives. And so I read this, and maybe it's all made up or whatever, but can you trust Osama bin Laden? No. But I think, do I like Osama bin Laden? No, obviously. But I'm an American, but I think it's important to know why, or at least what he said about why he did it. And the two reasons, there are a number of reasons, but the two big ones were you've got US forces on the Saudi Peninsula, two most holy cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina, like that's offensive to me. And the second reason was you're in critical support of Israel. So I read this on the air at CNN. Whoa, shouldn't have done that. I was immediately denounced as an anti-Semite.
So he worked over at CNN between 2001 and 2005. Those were like my high school years and I was not watching cable news. So I didn't even know that happened. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and so if you reference Osama bin Laden's manifesto, you were gonna get called an anti-Semite. Now that doesn't, of course that doesn't make any sense. You're not
endorsing it.
I read the Unabomber's manifesto, that doesn't make me a bomber. I wanted to know why he did it.
Right.
I'm in the news business. We're supposed to find out why they did it, right? So that's why it's very curious when news organizations say, don't do the news. Don't tell people why he did it. It could be that he did it for a terrible reason. It makes us hate him more, not less, right? And it doesn't matter, you kill 3,000 Americans, we're gonna hate him anyway, right? And what a weird thing to say that reading why he did it makes someone an anti-Semite. What? Why are those two things connected? Oh, you're telling on yourself. What they're accidentally saying to you is, if you find out why bin Laden did it, it's because of we're supporting Israel. Then you'll start to wonder, wait, why are we supporting Israel? And not that you'll agree with bin Laden, but it'll open up that question, and we don't want anyone thinking about that question. We want everyone to support Israel. But wait, you're a news organization. Why do you care about everyone supporting any country? Imagine if they were all like, no, we have to make sure that everyone is supporting Finland. You'd be like, that is awfully strange.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody spoke out against Finland, you better, they're gonna get a talking to. By the way, when I was on Current TV and I said something against Israel or just slightly critical of Israel, I got a call from management. Now they didn't, they didn't, to be fair to them, they didn't take me off the air. They didn't reprimand me. They didn't do anything wrong, right? But I did get a call. And
wow, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Drums.
So but I got a lot of calls at MSNBC. So like what people don't realize is they think cable news is real because nobody told them that it was actors and it's all a play, right? What they don't realize is most of the anchors don't even write their own scripts. They're just actors. They show up, they read the script.
The final thing I'll get into that I thought was fascinating in this conversation, this is the last video, D6. Tucker talks about a phone call he received from the Murdochs after he got fired from Fox News. And to me, the conversation, how it went down and what was promised to Tucker gives you a sense of how politics and campaigning really works.
The Murdochs really hate Trump. There's no one who hates Trump more than the Murdochs. I mean, I got fired in April of 2023. In May of 2023, they asked me to run for president against Trump and said they would back me. Obviously, I'm not running for any, I would never get elected anyway. Plus, I like Trump. I mean, that's the funny thing is I actually genuinely, I get frustrated. I'm frustrated now.
So hold on, I'm sorry.
Trump.
You just said that and people they asked you to run for president against Trump, the Murdochs.
Yeah. Lachlan Murdoch said you should run for president. We'll back you. The whole thing, the whole
Fox News apparatus,
and not just Fox, but Wall Street Journal,
all of their papers, everything.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll back you.
And that came right from.
You should do that. I was already gone. They'd already canceled my show. I was still under contract, but they canceled my show. You should run. We support you. You should run.
We want to stop Trump.
Yeah. Well, he was running.
I thought that was interesting. Interesting for a number of different reasons. You can talk about the Murdochs obviously not liking Trump and wanting to, help a challenger to Trump beat him in the primaries, but also the conversation about that whole Fox News apparatus, right? The media apparatus, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, New York Post. I mean, he named all of them in that. What do you think about that?
I mean, first of all, if you don't know that Murdoch tightly controls those news organizations and he just has them repeat whatever he wants, you're a babe in the woods. It's nice to know you. I mean, hello, welcome to American media.
Let me just make one quick important distinction though. I think that in the case of the Wall Street Journal, the news side sometimes does break really good stories and it's different from the editorial side. The editorial side obviously is very right wing, the editorial board, but should be thought of as different from the news side.
Yeah, the New York Post doesn't have a news side. They claim to have a news side. Fox News doesn't really have a news side. They claim to have a news side. No, it's all propaganda. And so that's not surprising. Number two, that's not surprising. Murdochs have been against Trump from day one. They never wanted Trump. Why? Because he's harder to control. So that's got upsides and downsides, right? It has a lot of downsides because he's a wild man and he doesn't even know what he's doing, right? And it leads to instability, etc. But the one upside for the rest of us that Trump has is that, well, it's harder for Rupert Murdoch to control him. It's harder for the neocons to control him. It's harder for Israel to control him. I don't know why Rupert Murdoch loves Israel, and I don't know why he loves war, okay? But he does. Those are two things that he cares most about.
Right.
And he's driven in that direction, not just in American media, but British, Australian media. He has been manipulating the whole world to be in favor of wars and Israel for whatever reason, right? And so that's why he's a little worried about Trump, because all the other politicians are super easy to control, incredibly easy. And that's why he makes that offer to Tucker, because he thinks, this Tucker guy, he's been with Fox News and I've given him tens of millions of dollars. If he's a good boy and he listens, maybe we can get rid of this Trump guy. Now, but when Trump did the bombing of Iran, Fox News flips immediately and they're like, what a beautiful strategic, brilliant move, brilliant, more war, yes, we love Trump, right? So then he goes for the ceasefire and then Fox is back to, I don't know. Okay.
I know, it's amazing. It really
and by
is.
the way, Sean Hannity is nothing but Murdoch's boy.
He is, yeah.
He's his little pet, okay? He's a good boy. Do more propaganda, little boy. And the show's like, oh yes, master, yes. What should I tell them today? Just put it in the script, I'll read it. That blockhead.
Yep. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, man, big updates on immigration policies that have been implemented in this country, Supreme Court rulings on it, and more. Don't miss it, we'll be right back.
So let's go to YouTube member section now. Madam Priest says, I love when Anna rants about Israel being a welfare state and stands up for America and our soldiers.
Damn right.
Okay, Zamukli Tusi writes in, dang, the bros are cooking, referring to Theo Vaughn and the others. I hear on other left-wing shows that the bros are all fascists, but okay. The Forsaken One, I'm not gonna let it go. The Forsaken One writes, I love TYT and I love Crystal and Kyle. I thought their debate was great. I'm still working on not being angry at the Trump voters, but I also understand why they did it. I still think it was the wrong decision, but no reason to make our world smaller. We need the voters. There are more Republicans than Democrats now. Thank you, Forsaken One. Look, and by the way, if you're angry at Trump, that makes perfect sense. Trump's done a lot of terrible things. And then by association, if you're angry at his voters, I get it, I wrote about it in my book, I've talked about it in the past. But I love that you were open-minded enough to go, oh right, but the correct strategy is they won the popular vote, we need to win it back, right? So excellent, couldn't agree more. Peril the Polar Bear Dragon says, hello my TYT family. Been a while since I could watch live. Love to all who make it possible. Thanks for saying that and thanks for watching live. Every day it's 6 to 8 o'clock Eastern, come check it out. Oh, by the way, at 8 o'clock today, I got Tara Palmieri. She worked at ABC, CNN, Politico, Puck, and she broke some of the Epstein stories. So that's gonna be a really interesting conversation. So that's tonight in just a little bit. Ambidextrous Rex says the TYT shop needs sweatpants. All right, well look into it. Okay, shoptyt.com. Maybe some robes too, huh? Okay. So Lydia, with a perfectly fine critique from earlier, wrote in, I feel like I'm getting lectured. Well, Lydia, if they came across that way, I don't mean it that way. But we do a show where we give our opinions. But I hear you, and I certainly don't want you to take that away from it. Nickmon55 says, Cenk, your rant yesterday was so moving. Just know that so many of us love and support both you and Anna for covering this awful topic. Don't let up. They deserve us continuing covering this and not let up at all. No, as long as the Palestinians are getting killed, I am definitely gonna fight back. And so is Anna, so we appreciate you guys. On Twitch, Sepacro1223 said, Cenk never answered if MAGA is a fascist movement. It's like he's triggered by the word fascist. No, I'm triggered by losing voters for no apparent reason at all because you want to feel better and have emotional release. It is not good strategy to do that, okay? But you could say, no, it is good strategy. If you yell at all the Trump voters and call them fascists, they'll come to your side. I don't know how in the world you could reach that conclusion, but apparently some of you have, and certainly almost all the left-wing hosts have, which is amazing. Zen Sons with another criticism. Trump starts a war and MAGA falls in line. Cenk is still trying to convince us that Trump is pro-peace and MAGA is anti-war. But brother, when he did the war, I was livid. And I said, F Trump. And then now when he's for a ceasefire, I say, okay, good, I'm glad he's for a ceasefire. You, on the other hand, apparently think dropping bombs on Iran and ceasefire are the same exact thing because you don't care about policy. Now I am in your grill, okay? And so I think you're saying I'm a tribalist and me hate, and I don't care if we go to war or have a ceasefire because I don't care about policy.
Look,
I think that's the wrong strategy.
Damn.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna, next.
Well, the ICE raids continue, and that's a bit of a problem, especially when you take a look at who's getting deported, who's getting targeted, and even Joe Rogan's sick of it.
Bro, these ICE raids are nuts, man. Watching this protest on television, it's like.
Do you think the raids are nuts?
All of it's nuts.
Yeah, I think
The
both
protests
sides are taking it a little
the
too
raids
hard.
Well, I don't think if the Trump administration, if they're running and they said, we're gonna go to Home Depot and we're gonna arrest all the people at Home Depot, we're gonna go to construction sites and we're gonna just like tackle people at constructions. I don't think anybody would have signed up for that. They said, we're gonna get rid of the criminals and the gang members first.
Preach. Now, last week, Joe Rogan called out the Trump administration for the right reasons, for expanding the scope of their ICE raids. And he also had some pretty harsh words for the policeman who shot an Australian journalist, a reporter, with a rubber bullet during the LA demonstrations. Here's a clip of that.
The problem is there's cops that just shoot people with rubber bullets for no reason.
Yeah.
Did you see that lady, that Australian reporter that got shot? Did you see that video?
No. It's pretty hilarious.
It's nuts because you see the guy do it. You see the cop. Just look at her while she's talking. She's clearly not a criminal. She's just reporting the news. And he shoots her in the leg with a rubber bullet. I can't believe that he would do this. Do you want to know why people get angry at cops? It's like that.
That's exactly right. And so when it comes to policing, I am not under any illusion that we don't need police, that we can abolish them and everything will be great. No, we absolutely need to reform policing. None of that has happened, which is infuriating. And that cop who shot that reporter with a rubber bullet should not only be fired, but he should be prosecuted for assault. Okay, what are you doing shooting a journalist as she's doing her job? She wasn't causing any problems, by the way. Anyway, I love that Rogan spoke out about this, and I want to get into some of the details about who's actually being deported in just a second, because Cato Institute looked into this. But Cenk, first.
Yeah, so everybody's a little bit wrong here from the two different sides. So Rogan's left-wing critics say that he doesn't disagree with Trump at all. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You just saw it with your own eyes, right? On the other hand, when Rogan says, if he said we're gonna deport people from construction sites and stuff, nobody would have signed on. That's also not true. So there is a portion of MAGA that says, oh yeah, from construction sites, restaurants, wherever, I don't care.
You're right about that, yes, you're right about that.
So, but the main point that Rogan's driving towards is true, which is most people, including the decisive voters in the middle that went with Trump, did not sign up for going in the middle of the country and snatching people up.
Yeah, from Home Depot parking lots, day laborers, really? Those are the people who are gonna be targeted?
I mean, it's worse than that. There's people that are like hiding in attics, and some kid climbed a tree to avoid the cops. I mean, it's just madness, right?
When unmarked cars show up with ICE agents who are wearing plain clothes, and they like violently snatch people up. And by the way, there's videos of this, you can all watch it. Okay, that scares people across the board. That is not what people signed up for.
So everybody does projection. So the MAGA guys then make the mistake of thinking that everybody thinks like they do. And America's gonna love it when people are snatched up off the streets.
No.
And America doesn't love it. The polling shows that America hates it. And that's why Rogan has got his finger on the pulse on this one, right? Now he does it on every issue, but on this issue, he's right. And so, and by the way, why is the left, some folks on the left instinctually say that Rogan's a fascist or with Trump and is part of a cult, etc., because they're tribalists. And so they assume that Rogan thinks like they do, that he's gonna be tribalist and only support one person or one party, right?
Yeah.
Or one ideology. No, in this case, he's looking at it as neutral, and he's right about where the American people are.
So I want to talk a little bit about what the Cato Institute just released in regard to data pertaining to individuals who have been targeted for deportation, and the numbers are, they should be terrifying for everybody, including American citizens. So as of June 14th, ICE had booked into detention 204,297 individuals since October 1st, 2024, the start of fiscal year 2025. Of those bookings, 65% or 133,687 individuals had no criminal convictions. So this idea that the majority of people who are being targeted have been convicted of serious crimes, that's just a lie, okay? Moreover, more than 93% of ICE bookings were never convicted of any violent offenses. About 9 in 10 had no convictions for violent or property offenses. All right, now again, Cenk is correct to note that there is a sizable portion of Trump voters who don't care. They just want mass deportations. That is absolutely true. But the independents, the lifelong Democratic voters who switched sides in this past election, did they want that? No. So that honestly fragile coalition that Trump was able to build in order to win in 2024, that's gonna fall apart as these targeted, disastrous raids that have ended up deporting all sorts of people who haven't actually committed any crimes. That's really gonna hurt the Republican brand and the Republican Party. Now, the numbers also illustrate how the Trump administration has shifted its focus from criminals to any immigrant that they can find. In early January, ICE was arresting about 32 immigrants per day in the interior who had no criminal conviction or pending charge. By early June, these arrests were approximately 453 per day, a 14-fold increase. And as the Wall Street Journal reported, this was all Stephen Miller's plan. Stephen Miller met with ICE and basically said, listen, your numbers are too low, so go for the low-hanging fruit. That was intentional, go to the Home Depot parking lots. Finally, I gotta get to the American citizens. Because between 2015 and 2020, ICE deported at least 70 people who were US citizens, according to the Government Accountability Office. In total, the watchdog found that ICE arrested 674 potential US citizens, detained 121, and ended up deporting 70. Okay. Other research suggests that number of American citizens deported by ICE could be far higher. Research by Jacqueline Stevens, a political scientist at Northwestern University, shows that up to 1% of all detainees at immigration detention centers are US citizens. If that 1% figure was constant throughout all deportations, that would mean 4,000 US citizens a year are deported. US citizens. I'm not talking about green card holders. I'm not talking about visa holders. I'm talking about American citizens getting deported.
So a quick point about it is that's why you need due process.
Yes.
Because without due process, then you're accidentally deporting US citizens, and that's unacceptable to everyone. So now, I've got to tell you about one other fact that's critical. So Obama was known as the deporter in chief. Why? He deported more people than any other president. In 1 year, he did about almost 430,000 removals, right? So how come Obama's policies weren't as inflammatory and controversial as Donald Trump? Is part of it because the media treats Obama better than Trump? Yes, a part of it is about that. But there's also a real substantive reason. Because Obama did two things. He did secure cities so that whenever an undocumented immigrant was picked up for a crime and convicted, they were immediately removed, okay? A lot of liberal cities got rid of that and made sanctuary cities. So that is partly why the Democratic policies seem to shift. And so we went away from secure cities, but that was working and it was popular and it was aimed at just getting rid of undocumented criminals,
right?
Okay, but the other thing that he did is he processed them at the border. So instead of just returning them, which Bill Clinton broke the record on removal and return, both Democratic presidents, right? Obama would process them so that if they returned, they would be banned from the country for 10 years. If they were returned twice, they'd be banned forever. So that was an efficient way of returning folks, but going through a process to make sure that they didn't have a human rights claim, an asylum claim. So then you do the right thing in treating them legally, but you also return them quicker, right? So it's a win-win. But what Obama didn't do, even as he was breaking records on removal, was go in the middle of the country and uproot people who had been there for 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, etc., and separate out families. That seems much more cruel, and I think it is more cruel.
Yes.
And that is why people are objecting to this. And by the way, the reason Stephen Miller is told him in early June, you better get going, is because it's really bothering them that Trump can't break Obama's record.
It's so pathetic.
It is. It's so childish and ridiculous. But now they're doing it in a way that is not popular and is driving down their numbers on immigration. He actually got to an unpopular number on immigration when Trump was sky high in the beginning, when he was just sending away the criminals, right? Or we thought the criminals. And then you find out, of course, he did a sloppy job as always, didn't do his homework, and included a whole bunch of people. In fact, a majority of people he shouldn't have sent.
I agree, yep.
Yeah, okay, so we gotta go. I've got Tara Palmieri coming up next. She worked at the White House for ABC. She was a CNN, Politico, so many others. Also covered the Epstein files. So it's gonna be a really interesting interview, both a little bit about mainstream media and a little bit about the Epstein files. So stay right here, freely available to everyone. We'll see you there. right, back on the Young Turks. Got a fun interview for you guys today. Tara Palmieri joins me. She's an independent journalist, author of The Red Letter on Substack, host of the Tara Palmieri Show. But she was also at ABC News, Politico, CNN, Puck, New York Post, Washington Examiner, you name it. She was a White House reporter covering the Trump administration in the first term for Politico. And Sean Spicer said, quote, she's an idiot with no real sources, which is hilarious. Tara, thanks for joining us, and I'll ask you right away. What do you say to Sean Spicer back?
I just say consider the source.
Is he suing you or something?
He threatened to, but yeah, that went away pretty quickly. I don't think it would hold up in court. And also, again, consider the source, Sean Spicer. So.
Yeah, I hear you. We actually had him on the show recently. We should get you guys together, or maybe we shouldn't.
I don't know about that one. I don't know why I got under his skin. I gotta say, it was really strange to me. He really just didn't like me very much, and I felt like I was pretty fair. But
yeah,
well.
So Tara, that's actually part of what I want to start with. You also covered the Epstein files, and I want to get to that too. That's super interesting. But we had on here Sam Donaldson, probably nearly 20 years ago on the Young Turks, and he told a great story about Roone Arledge, legendary, head of ABC News for a long time. That when Sam Donaldson was the White House reporter for ABC at the time, whenever Reagan called to complain about Donaldson, Roone Arledge would give him a raise. And then later,
that's the way it should be.
Yes. So and later when he covered the Clinton administration, Roone Arledge did the same exact thing. So it didn't matter if it was a Republican or a Democrat.
Right.
But if the administration complained about you got a raise. So I'm a little afraid that we've lost those days. But you've covered it. You've been in a lot of mainstream media organizations or legacy media or whatever we want to call them. So what's your sense of it? Are we still as aggressive against both parties and the powerful, or not as much?
It's hard because there are these very insider organizations now. There's so many of them. It's so fragmented, and they really are selling on access, right? There's just so many news organizations, from Politico to Punchbowl to Axios, and everybody is just trying to get that last scrap, that last little scoop, right? And everybody wants access. And President Trump is obviously not only threatening to cut off access, but he's also threatening to sue on top of all that, and it is suing. Look what happened with CBS having to settle, and so it's putting these major news organizations in a position that is not choosing news, right? They're choosing their business over the news, actual investigative journalism, and bringing information to the public, I think. And that's not to say, that everyone is corrupt and you can't believe anything that you read in the news. I do think there are a lot of really well-meaning journalists, but I think sometimes when the story gets all the way to management, they can slow roll it if they know it's going to be a problem. They look at you like you are a problem when you bring in the hard stories. It would be a lot easier for them if you didn't. And so you really have to find some bosses that really believe in you, that want to make trouble. I mean, a good journalist makes trouble.
Yes, couldn't agree more. All right, so let's break that down, because you said a lot of interesting things there. So people often talk about access, but I think the folks at home, they don't know why the media organizations are obsessed with access. Why? What is it about access that's so important to these media organizations?
I personally don't understand why they're so obsessed with access to President Trump when he tweets everything out. There is no mystery. There is no, he answers the phone for anyone. I called him 2 weeks ago. He answered the phone and we spoke. I mean, he's literally the most successful person of all time. So this idea of trying to get in with the administration is silly. Plus, I don't think he really respects journalists too that are that are playing just for access to him. He wants to be loved. That's part of the Trump psychology, right? Trying to win daddy back. And that includes with journalists. Why do you think Maggie Haberman has been one of the most successful journalists at the New York Times? President Trump can't win her over. And their relationship goes way back. Actually, Maggie and I used to work in the same newsroom at the New York Post. And that's when I met Donald Trump when I was 22 years old. And he used to call me all the time and ask me to write about him running for president. And I literally had to say, Mr. Trump, we can't write about you anymore running for president. Because you're not. And so that's all to say is like this president, his drug is media. Like that is his heroin.
Yeah.
He loves to talk to journalists. That's why he picks up the phone at midnight.
First of all, Tara, he called you when you were 22. All the time. Wow.
I was working at Page Six.
Yep.
I was working at Page Six, which is in the New York, to him, being in the tabloids, in the gossip column, and there was nothing higher.
Oh,
and
for
sure,
sure.
I was the 22-year-old working at Page Six.
Yes, okay. And both of those things are things he's very attracted to. Anyways, but you're right. The Page Six stuff with Trump is hilarious. When he would pretend to be John Barron and call in about how he was dating Madonna and stuff. Doesn't get any funnier than that.
He stopped pretending with me. I think he was at his political stage at that point and thought like, write this down. Like I am about to be the president of the United States. It was not, it was less about his love life. He was married to Melania. I guess his Playboy days were allegedly behind him, not so much as we saw, but you know. It was a bit of a different agenda.
But okay, so with Trump, you don't need that much access and he's gonna give it to you anyway. But is it because the editors and publishers think overall in politics, breaking a story is so important to their business model, and the only way to break stories is if you have access to the politicians with those stories? Is that why they're catering to them more?
I think so. I also think with President Trump, I mean, it just gets so much more complicated too. I think you saw what happened with Politico, where they cut the subscriptions that the government agencies had to the Politico Pro. That's a huge part of their business model. He can be vindictive. He cut the Associated Press out of the pool, and the Associated Press, their business model relies on them putting out wires, being present, physically present at events. And if they're not able to be there to cover them, that puts them at a huge disadvantage when they're competing against Reuters. And so I just think he really knows how to play with the business interests of the press. And I've always believed, though, access journalism is not the best journalism. Even when Spicer and I'm not even gonna go into it, but even when I was reporting mostly from the outside of the White House, I still felt that I was still breaking stories because I had more time to pick up the phone or to go out and meet with people who don't want to be seen talking to me, right? I mean, those are the best sources. And those are the best stories. I mean, it's the real shoe leather journalism. The people who are sitting in the briefing room, raising their hand and asking the question in front of everyone in America, the performance of it all, the performative nature of it, they're not breaking any big story. The people who are breaking the big stories, they're behind the scenes hitting the phones and trying to get the scoop. And I think what you see in a lot of the briefing room is jousting. It's important. It's important jousting. We need that for public debate, and we need to hold people in power to account. I would never say it's not important, but there's a place for all of it. And I think we all just need to understand where we sit into this ecosystem and make sure that the business interests don't become more important than the public interest, which is public service, which is delivering information. But yeah, access journalism has always been a problem.
Yeah. So you mentioned they might slow roll some hard stories. So in this era, it's easy to kind of figure out what a hard story might be, something critical of Trump, right? But can you give us, outside of Trump, minus Trump, examples of what might be hard stories where they'd go, this is gonna cause some issues for us?
It's hard to say because I haven't worked in a newsroom in a while I mean, when I remember when I worked at Politico, for example, and I was covering Joe Biden, and I broke the story about Hunter Biden and the gun and really the thing that got him indicted. That took a very long time to get that published. I got the feeling that it was being slow rolled. It was at the beginning of the administration. A lot of my colleagues didn't like it. I mean, newsrooms are political on both sides. And I've never been one to pick a side based on the politics or who's in power and who's not. I don't like groupthink, and I tend to gravitate towards the stories that are outside of the groupthink, or maybe others are a little afraid to touch. But I've seen it on both sides. Now, I was only at Puck for I think like a month or two into this Trump administration, but I never felt that they tried to stop me from reporting anything really. I was pretty tough on the Trump campaign, although I was honest. I was like, I was one of the few reporters that was saying they're winning. People hated that, and people hated when you reported that. But it was true.
Yep.
I was like, this is what's happening. And I even on Reddit, people are like, what's wrong with this woman? We hate her. And then guys, these are sometimes, it's an inconvenient truth. But the Trump team also hated me because I was talking about how they were making money and the drama behind the scenes and the concerns and the messy ground game. I mean, I think report and then let the pieces fall where they could fall, right?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of sound like a reporter, where you're supposed to accurately report. These are the problems that they're having, but they are winning, and they were winning.
Yeah, they did win.
Believe me, I know. We took tremendous heat for saying he's winning. The polling is clear. Certainly in the beginning, in the middle, certainly when Biden was in the race, it wasn't even close, right? And so, but people often don't want to hear the truth. Okay, one more thing about legacy media before we move to the files. From my taste, they don't cover money in politics almost at all, right? And I don't get it. I mean, I think I do, but from a news perspective, I don't get it, because 95% of the time, the person with more money wins the race. And I wouldn't report that like, oh, it's a wonderful thing. Oh, this person is leading the race because they've raised more money. I would wonder, well, yeah, then who do they owe, right? But that part of the story never, ever, ever gets told. And then in the legislation, oh my God, the lobbyists have massive, massive influence, and they pretty much tell the politicians what to do. But whenever I read legacy media, that's not the story I see. The story I see is about how they're having a debate about policy or ideology. So what do you make of that? Why do you think that is not as emphasized in legacy media?
Okay, so the sources to the stories, a lot of them, are the consultants around these politicians, right? The lobbyists, for example. And if you start writing about their money, you will be cut off. That's who really cuts you off. That's who really takes away your access. Those are the people who really make it difficult for you. If you mention, they have pass-through accounts that are making millions of dollars are coming in there from a super PAC, or you talk about, who's donating to their PACs or this or that. I mean, Ken Vogel at the New York Times is a great reporter. He's really on this. He really has covered money and influence in politics for a really long time. But a lot of journalists, especially beat reporters, they fall into the trap of not wanting to cover their sources because their sources benefit from this kind of big money, PAC money, from lobbying money. They benefit from all that. It's the swamp. The swamp feeds itself, and the journalists are part of it too.
Yeah, that's a great answer. There's a couple of things in there that I hadn't considered. Since I'm not in that world, the power of the consultants is something I read about, but didn't experience in the way that you described.
It's like a mafia. It really is. No, it's not a mafia, and people don't die because of it. But their careers can be ended in a lot of ways, right? I think there's a real power of the consultancy class, but they're also blamed. They're always the first to be blamed too when a candidate loses. I mean, there's a circular firing squad happening right now within the Biden world and the Harris world. How can you spend over $1 billion and still lose, right? Who made money? Which PAC made all this money? Who cleaned up at the end? There's a lot of anger at that super PAC. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it was run by Biden's. Yes, Future Forward. It was run by Biden's former communications director, Anita Dunn. Where did all that money go? That's what everyone always says, right? But that someone walked away a lot richer. And the candidate loses. And that makes people angry because you can walk away rich as long as your candidate wins, because once you're in power, then everyone gets wealthy through the influence game. Access to power. Again,
It's so sick.
It's all about getting that. It's all about that access game, and it works for the journalists too. I mean, that's part of the reason why I don't live in Washington. I just think that there's something about it. It rubs off on you. I go there frequently, but for work, to do reporting, to meet with sources. But at the end of the day, I think you got to get out of there, take a shower, and rearrange, your life, and realize this is not normal.
Yeah, no. That is a really interesting way of framing it. I think that's right. I think those, and if you noticed, by the way, for those of you at home, how many stories have been written where they named the consultants that kept a lot of money and got super rich off this campaign, even though Kamala Harris lost? I haven't seen any. I don't know if there's been one or two, but I've seen zero.
It's rare. You do see it from time to time. My former colleague Teddy Schleifer at the New York Times, he's written about it. I've written about it as well, particularly after the campaign when people realized that Kamala Harris was in debt after all of that. I mean, people were furious. Got tons of phone calls. But yeah, a lot of people they're not really willing to sell out their sources. And believe me, if someone's a former communications director and they're working a super PAC, they know how to work journalists to make sure their names are not in the story. So,
yeah, that's another huge part of it. Once you're a source, you get more protected. Okay, so now let's, speaking of protected and not protected, let's go to Jeffrey Epstein. So you've covered this for a while. So first, fun question, what do you think? Are the files relevant when we finally see them? Is there something real in the files? Of course, you're guessing, it's your estimation based on covering it. And B, are we ever going to see the files?
Okay, so there's no John Doe list. I'm so tired of hearing people say the list, okay? There is no list. Everybody needs to get over that. There is no list. Now, I've gone through almost all the public files, and those are the files that Pam Bondi put out. There was nothing new. It was a complete joke when she did that. And she used these right-leaning influencers as props in front of the White House with her classified binder. Nothing in there was classified. It was Virginia Giuffre Roberts. All of those were her court documents, basically. She's a very good friend of mine. I worked on the podcast with her, Broken, Jeffrey Epstein. Definitely check it out. We traveled all over and we found witnesses to corroborate her case and the case of so many others. And they ended up using it actually to prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell, the only person, by the way, who is behind bars right now, despite the fact that this is like the largest sex trafficking operation, maybe in our modern time right now. It's unclear, at least in America. But the point is that no one has paid the price for this. And there's absolutely evidence that hasn't been released. There's photographs, I'm sure. There are videos. The girls told me that they basically filmed everything. There were videos of everything. They were constantly collecting compromise. So I'm sure the FBI has that. Problem is there are minors, okay, involved in this. And so I could see why they don't want to make that footage, that data public, because there are a lot of women's names. There are, the names of children, now women. There are graphic photos. I remember Virginia telling me that she was brought into the FBI and they saw a picture of her being raped by very prominent person. I don't want to mention it right now because, I feel uncomfortable speaking about her and her experience in her death, something that she didn't talk about publicly. But yeah, they have photographic evidence. That's probably what they're withholding, and the videos, that footage. They could certainly try to prosecute these people.
Yeah, so a couple of things about that. I don't know what's
stopping them. Some of the names that I've heard, I can understand why they're not prosecuting them. They're very powerful people.
Yeah. So, a word you used might explain it. You use the word compromat, and that's having, compromising information about a public official that you could then use, presumably, to blackmail them and influence them. And so, who was collecting this as compromat?
Oh, Epstein was. He was absolutely collecting it.
Just Epstein, or do we think there was someone behind Epstein?
Oh, you think Mossad? Is that what you're thinking? I I know that he was helping the CIA. I remember seeing that in some of the data, in some of the documents that he had offered some information to CIA. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was factored into his sweetheart deal. I mean, he did travel a lot. He was friends with Ehud Barak. You know, he was constantly, he was constantly among powerful people. He picked up things and he passed it along, and that was a factor in his sweetheart deal. Do I think he also did that with other intelligence agencies? I don't think Epstein was a particularly upstanding gentleman. So I think, you know, it's possible. I just don't have any, I've never had any data to suggest that or know anything about that. But I know that the people he spent time with certainly had those contacts. He knew people at the highest levels of many governments. And I could see them seeing him as being a useful person. I mean, it's really unclear to me how a guy who was a high school math teacher suddenly becomes a billionaire, right?
He was a high school math teacher.
Right. He was a high school math teacher.
No, I know. That's what's funny. I mean,
Lex Wexner is the only reason he has billions of dollars. It's crazy. I mean, he was teaching at Dalton, trying to pick up students. They had to get rid of him.
Yeah, well,
Bill Barr's father actually was like, "You're done. You're out."
So hold on, I want to talk about that more. So first, for the audience, Ehud Barak's former prime minister of Israel and the person who gave Epstein the sweetheart deal back in, I think, 2008 down in Miami was Acosta, who then later became Trump's labor secretary in his first term. And he was
his lawyer was Ken Starr.
Yeah.
Epstein's lawyer was Ken Starr, who you all know.
Yeah, that is so curious, right? So
he hired Republicans and Democrats when he did this. He made sure to have the full gambit.
Yeah.
So that he could work every angle.
So tell us about Lex Wexner. You said he picked him up and turned him into a billionaire. Who is he?
Les Wexner is the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret. He created Victoria's Secret, and now he's disgraced. I believe the board took it away from him, but I mean, he's obviously someone that Epstein would be attracted to. He's the man who creates Victoria's Secret angels, right? He had access to the runway show, the lifestyle, and they became very good friends. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein helped introduce Les to his wife, Abigail. And it's very weird because most people say that Les was not exactly a party animal. He wasn't like Jeffrey, who liked to be out and about. But they were very close to the point where they had houses right next to each other. And there was a tunnel that connected the two houses on the Upper East Side. And these were the largest mansions and Epstein bought Les's apartment for $20 million, markedly underpriced. Their relationship was very weird to the point where some people suggested that they might be lovers, that they were that close.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the underground tunnel connecting their houses, I mean, especially knowing Epstein, I mean, that reeks of creepy. But you know, if Les wasn't into that lifestyle, you know, but somebody's collecting compromat, maybe connects to the people who are collecting the compromat. We don't know, I don't know, but it's impossible not to ask questions because there's the biggest bucket of compromat the world has ever seen. And the idea that the intelligence agencies would not be interested in that is preposterous. And then he shows up dead in a maximum security prison in America with the video camera not working in the hallway and the guards on break and his roommate removed. All right, so let me ask you that.
I'm with you though. I think it's very suspicious. I'm not very conspiratorial. I'm really not. I try to live in the fact world, but there are a lot of coincidences in that story. I mean, and there was the cop from Long Island inside of the who people say, I mean, CBS News suggested he could have been paid off privately. You know,
so I don't know as much about that one. So look, for just real quick, so you know, Tara, I said live on the air when we found out that he got killed. I said if the camera in the hallway is working, then it was a suicide. If the camera in the hallway was not working, then he was killed. And when and we found out later the camera isn't working, I'm like, there are no coincidences that large. Like the most valuable prisoner.
And he bragged that he was Trump's boy, that Trump was his boy, and that he would never prosecute him. He did that just years before he was arrested.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he's so despondent that he's going to kill himself when he thinks Trump's never going to prosecute him. And by the way, it's a very good reason for believing that. They were friends for a long time. And when Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested and they asked Trump about it, he said twice that she's a very fine person. So, like, and he knows her. I mean, that is an unbelievable thing to say about the top groomer of our lifetimes. For the president to say that, it's just stunning. But tell me more about the cop.
I'm happy you called her a groomer, by the way, because that is what she was. And she's often inappropriately and disrespectfully to these girls called a madam. And it's like, no, you cannot be a madam to a 14-year-old. They're children.
Yeah.
You know, it's
textbook groomer, textbook.
Yeah.
Right.
Horrible what she did.
Yeah, and not a fine person, a terrible person, right? So, okay, so you were saying about the Long Island detective. Tell me more about that.
Well, there's a cop in Long Island, and I remember that 60 Minutes did a very long piece about what you talked about. The fact that he would have to have hung himself with the sheets, and the guards were asleep, and you know, the camera's off, and that the way that what happens inside of prisons. Well, first of all, pedophiles don't do well in prison, by the way. They're often the first to be killed. Even for criminals who commit murder and do other heinous acts, the lowest of low in a prison is a pedophile. And so they are often targeted. But there's a possibility, they suggested that this police officer from Long Island could have been paid off by someone to do this. Now, he wouldn't obviously get the money directly, but it would go to his family. So I always thought, check out around his neighborhood and see if they all of a sudden have new cars, or they're updating their houses, or they're buying a boat. But you know, that's sort of how it's done. It's not like, you know, this idea that the Clintons are clawing into the you know, into the jailhouse. It's like they had El Chapo in there. I mean, it's crazy to think about the level. This prison has held some of the most important detainees we've ever really had. And I just think
there's one thing.
The coincidence.
Yeah, Tara, in my opinion, there's one thing that's just inarguable. There is no force on earth that can kill someone inside a maximum security prison in America and not have either the Democrats or the Republicans turn them in. And that's one of
This wasn't a maximum security prison, and it did have its flaws. I do remember that the New York Post pointed out that this prison wasn't a great one, but still, I just, you have a very high profile prisoner in there.
Yeah. And so I hear you on that, and it's a good clarification and correction that it wasn't maximum security. By the way, he should have been in maximum security, right? Especially given what happened. But still, having that person killed inside a prison, and then neither side outs who did it, it's got to be an intelligence agency. There's no other force on earth that could do that other than either CIA or Mossad or both. I mean, I suppose it could be a different intelligence agency.
You pay someone to do the inside job, or you're right, like, or someone.
But why wouldn't they release the files then if it's like some rando?
Like, no, who killed Epstein?
Yeah.
I think there's just. They're just really, really powerful people, I think. That are
well, there you go. Okay.
And I think they're on both sides, because even the way he handled the first case against him, which was somehow brought down to prostitution of a child, of a 14-year-old, as if you can solicit a 14-year-old for prostitution. That's what his first charge was back in, it was 2001 or 2000, or no, it was 2008, excuse me.
2008, I think.
Yeah, exactly, 2008. And first of all, that's an absurd charge.
Yeah.
You can't, a 14-year-old can't be a prostitute. But they worked every political angle they could possibly work. They hired the lawyers when they had to deal with, at the county level, the Democrats, they hired the top Democratic lawyers they could possibly find. When they had to go to and deal with Acosta, they hired all the top Republican lawyers they could find. They worked it all the way up to the AG when George W. Bush was president. So it was like he had the money to buy everyone. Everyone was bought.
Yeah. So one last thing about that. So look, I get that if you've got the victims' names or the victims in the videos or the pictures, that's uncomfortable, et cetera. First of all, redacting doesn't take 10 years. It doesn't take 2 years. It doesn't take 1 year. It doesn't take 6 months. I could redact that document for you in a week, okay? Or I don't care if you have a room full of documents. Trust me, we can redact it in a couple of weeks, okay? But at a bare minimum, is there even an excuse for not releasing the names of the clients? I mean, we know who they were, and we know that they were with underage girls. So what's the reason not to release the names?
I don't know. I think maybe I hope that it is to protect the women. I mean, some of them, this is like traumatic to have information to have out there without your consent. I mean, a lot of women don't talk about sexual abuse or the violence committed against them because it's re-traumatizing.
But Tara, we already know that they got traumatized, and we already know, unfortunately, a lot of the women's
But that doesn't mean that they want all the details of it out there.
No, but it doesn't have to be details. It could just be the names, and I don't see how that further traumatizes anyone because it's not the names of the victims; it's the names of the clients.
It's very complicated. I mean, it took me a really long time to earn the trust of the victims, the survivors, but a lot of them still, they don't want to talk about it. There's been a number of suicides. It's not just Virginia Giuffre. It's really hard psychologically what they've been through. And I don't know, listen, I don't know if the government has decided that they want to think about the psychological impact on these young women, but I do think that if you got a phone call from the FBI and they said, hey, we're gonna release the details around your assault and the person who did it, and this is going to cause a news cycle, and this is going to cause, reporters to, call you or this or that. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, I hear you.
There's a reason they go by Jane Doe. I know, usually Jane Does come forward and they say, I'm the Jane Doe and I'm going after John Doe, right? But when the details of their cases come out without their permission, that's when it gets difficult, even when they are Jane Does.
Yeah, listen, that is definitely true of the women, and I can understand why they would be re-traumatized if you got into the details or their names, their identities, the acts, etc. But I'm not buying. I'm not buying that the U.S. government is so concerned about re-traumatizing the victims that is why they're hiding the names of the guilty. I think they're hiding the names of the guilty because they care more about the clients that did these terrible things than they care about the women who suffered from it.
Listen, you may be right, and I'm not trying to cover for the U.S. government, but I see that side of the coin. But I think that what they should do, rather than release the names, is actually stand up a trial and actually indict these people, make them pay for the crimes, rather than just shame them publicly and then they can deny it. They actually put together a case, prosecute them, like you did to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Isn't that amazing that they're not prosecuting these known pedophiles? They know that they did it. They literally have them on tape and they're saying, golly gee, we just can't. No, there's the American government, however they're compromised, whether it's CIA or anything else, is definitely compromised in this case. There is no other logical explanation for why not to prosecute pedophiles when you have them on tape as pedophiles. Like, it's just not, no. They're protecting those people for whatever reason. And
I agree. And I have to say that I have never seen the tapes, to be clear. I just know from the girls that they believe everything was taped.
Yeah, that's because it was taped, because it was compromised. And it was, but so anyways, it's super interesting. I love that we had this conversation. To me, everybody can draw different conclusions. The conclusions that I draw have become even more firm. That I would be shocked if it wasn't an intelligence agency. I mean, theoretically, I guess it could be the British. They don't seem as likely, but they had Prince Andrew, right? But it's got to be an intelligence agency. No one else could kill someone in a US president like that and have the American government not object and have the American government not prosecute any of the guilty that are on tape. It's just not conceivable.
Yeah, I mean, he was a secretive guy. I did another podcast on Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who was also assumed to be a part of Mossad. He died mysteriously falling off his yacht.
No, of course he did.
And the Lady Ghislaine, he named after his daughter, and he was said to be the person who connected Ghislaine with Jeffrey Epstein. So it's never been proven, but he's believed to be the matchmaker between the two. So maybe that is where a connection was formed. He is a very interesting character. It's called Power, the Maxwells. If you're looking to binge, it is truly a binge. But you can understand where she came from. Daddy was a lot like Epstein.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Things that make you go, when you find out the biggest rumor in American history, his dad was a Mossad agent. And then the rest of it kind of falls into place. All right, but you never know. You never know. But we just can give you the facts we know, but not the facts we don't know. Okay, Tara's newsletter is called The Red Letter on Substack, and her show is the Tara Palmieri Show. Tara, I love that we did this. We should do this more often.
Yeah, thank you. And, you can find me on YouTube too now. That's where we saw each other recently.
Yep.
And it's at Tara Palmieri. I just launched, but I appreciate you having me on, and I'm happy to come on whenever, and I'd love to have you on my show too. We're just getting started, but I'm so impressed with what you've built over the decades. I remember I was on your show about 10 years ago, I think, or was it 2018 or 2019 when Epstein was arrested, and I came on and I talked to you about it.
Yeah.
From a closet during COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah. You always ask the right questions.
Thank you. And yeah, well, all of that has been brought a little bit out of the closet these days, the Epstein files, but not completely out. Still a lot in the closet. Anyways, yes, I'd love to do your show. Everybody check out Tara's show, Tara Palmieri Show on YouTube. And again, check out our Substack Red Letter as well. All right, thanks, Tara. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow.